Okay, so ladies and
Okay,
gentlemen, we are back
so
with
ladies and
you here
gentlemen, we are back
on
with you
Celtics
here
Radio.
on
It's
radio,
video chat number 6.
video chat number
We
6.
are, you
We
guys,
are,
just
you
15
guys,
games
was
away
15 days
from the All-Star
away
break. The
from the
Celtics are
All-Star
sitting in
break.
fourth place,
Celtics are sitting in fourth
just
place,
after beating the
just
Los Angeles
after beating
Clippers last
the
night in
Los
what was
Angeles last night in what was
pretty convincing win
pretty
overall in terms
convincing
of
win
where the
over
Celtics
in terms of where
stand
the
in the NBA.
in the
No
NBA.
Jaylen Brown,
No
off to
Jaylen
the
Brown,
start. Of course,
off
the
to
Celtics
start,
had
of course,
no Paul
had no
George, no
Paul
Patrick
George,
Beverley.
no Patrick Beverley.
Down to the wire
Down to the wire
overall, and
overall,
yet the Celtics
and
were victorious.
Celtics were victorious.
You
You
had the Celtics
had
Igor
the Celtics
situation
in a
win that
situation
accounted for a
win
victory
that
one
accounted
for
for one for.
So you guys,
So,
we're going to be discussing the
guys,
last
we're going to be
three
discussing
games,
the
which of
last
course is the
three
5 game
games, which
road
of
trip.
course is a 5 game road.
Celtics are now swimming after many people thought the
After
Celtics
many
were going
people
to end
thought
up
the Celtics
going
were going to end up
through this
going
road trip
through this
pretty much
road trip
0 and
pretty much
5, 0 and
0 and
4.
5,
Road
0
trip
and
started with a
4.
111
Started with a
107
111
victory
107
over the Golden
victory
State Warriors.
over the Golden State
However, the
Warriors.
Celtics lost
However, the Celtics lost
102-111 to
111
Sacramento Kings
to Sacramento Kings.
the very next night.
The very next night,
Then, last night,
then
over
last
the
night,
Los Angeles
over the
Clippers
Los
119
Angeles Clippers
to 15. They will
119-15.
finish the
They
road
will
trip
finish the road trip
against the Phoenix Suns
against the
tomorrow,
Phoenix
2
Suns
p.m. Eastern
tomorrow, 2
Time,
p.m. Eastern
and the
time,
Utah
and the
Jazz on
Utah
Tuesday,
Jazz on
10
Tuesday,
p.m. Eastern
10
Time on
p.m. Eastern
PNC.
time on PNC.
So, Kevin,
So,
let's
Kevin,
start with you.
let's
What's your
start with
takeaway
you. What's
with
your
a 2 and
takeaway
win
with a
record
2
on
and
this
1 record
conference road
on
trip?
this conference road trip?
Um, well, in actuality, I was really impressed with the win last night. Um, the Warriors game, I felt that we should have won that game. It shouldn't have been as close as it was. Um, I still see a lack in defensive effort, and I also see them still shooting a lot of threes, settling for a lot of jump shots that are going to the basket. The Kings game, we had our chances in there and we didn't take advantage of it, and we lost that. I think if we were to replay that game over again, I think we win the next one. If we were to play that game before that during this road trip. Um, what I really was impressed with last night was how Jaylen Brown, how Jason Tatum um, went to the basket more. He was going in the paint, and I like that. I love that. So um, I guess they're bringing him along slowly when it comes to this, um, as well. But I love seeing him go to the basket and getting the 3 point plays, the old fashioned way. Still, free throw shooting is an issue with him. We need to, as a team, I think we need to value our free throws a little bit more. Looking at Pritchard coming back, he looks good. Edwards looked pretty good last night. Um, I don't know if they're playing. They're playing Edwards because they got to play because of Marcus Smart not being there, and maybe Jaylen Brown. But this gives him an opportunity to be seen if he does become part of a trade, with this exception that we have, trade exception. If he's part of the trade, so people are getting a good look at him, and they're seeing that he can basically play at this level. He played really well last night. Um, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know if it's because he's getting the time, because you look at some things and Tremont might play just like as well as Edwards. One plays, the other one don't play. Then the one plays, the other one don't play. So I don't know. It's just that they 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 look good last night without Marcus and Jaylen. So if you bring those two back, of course somebody's minutes is going to get cut. But overall, I was really impressed with the game last night defensively. Again, like I said, the one steal that Jason Tatum got on Kawhi, that was real good for us. Even though they didn't have Paul George, um, they're missing one. We're missing two players, so it kind of didn't balance out like it should have. But we still came out with the victory. So I'm pretty pleased right now with the road trip. Um, I'll feel a whole lot better when they play the Phoenix Suns, and we see how that game turns out. And the thing about it is, if they win or even if they don't win or lose, I'm starting to see them coming together. Um, Now my only concern is Kemba Walker's shooting. Um, is question. I'm questioning his shooting, his shot selection actually. During this series, he just shoots the ball and it ain't even close. You know what I'm saying? So, um, that's the only thing I'm really questioning. Other than that, I'm okay. I'm okay with how it's turning out so far.
Danny, we have some questions.
Hey, we have some questions. So
let's answer that.
let's answer that. We will have the All-Star weekend.
Apparently, NBA and NBA Association made agreement about NBA All-Star weekend. So Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and somebody else from the Celtics make the All-Star break. We will see them on the actual game. Another question. If we have to give that minutes to Edwards because Peter Pritchard got something to say and he's about Edwards right now. Let's ask Andy what does he think? Who is better and who should give minutes, Edwards or Peyton Pritchard? So Andy, welcome to the Celtics Radio again. Andy is practically and writer at our page.
Andy?
Yeah, hey, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Echo here on my trouble hearing you. Could you repeat the question?
Jerome Polo asked, do you think that we should give more minutes to Edwards or Peyton Pritchard? Because according to his opinion, Peyton Pritchard is higher than Edwards right now.
I'm still having trouble.
He has troubles to hear.
Andrew, can you see you see a private chat and you see a comment? Do you see the comments on your computer?
Yeah.
Okay. Click on comments, and the question that was asked was the one that was at 6:06 p.m. That's the question that okay.
Okay. Oh, I think that when it comes to they're both young players. There's a couple of different ways that you can look at. The first way that you look at young players is you ride the hot. Kind of start both of them off. First or second quarters. You see who's on fire, who's acting, and then you ride whichever one of them is doing well. The other way you could do it is potentially including Carson Edwards in a trade package. You would probably want to give him more minutes at this point because we want other teams to see those shots where firing beyond the mark. Because that's going to show other GMs player, and that's how you in terms of who's going to play more, I think both of them rookies and both of them picks. I think they both understand how much playing time they get is going to be needed by how well they're playing on that given night. You know, I don't. You know, neither one of them. Your JT is established that rotation, and they're going to get their minutes no matter what happens. These younger guys, I think they're going to get minutes.
Okay. Jerome is saying that I'm getting echo. I don't know.
I hear you. I hear you fine. Um,
I think
I
that
hear everybody fine, other than
uh,
Andy.
uh-huh. Okay.
Okay.
Danny, let's continue with
Let's
the Clippers
continue
game,
with the Clippers game,
and
and
let's break down a
let's
little
break down
Clippers game.
Clippers
I
game.
mean, we discussed it, and let's say that the Clippers they played without Reggie Jackson,
They played
and
without,
they played
and
without
they played without
Paul George and
Paul
without
George and
Patrick
without
Beverly. The
Patrick Bevan.
Celtics played without
The
Jaylen
Celtics
Brown,
played
Marcus
without
Smart,
Jaylen Brown,
and
Marcus Smart, and
Romeo Langford.
Romeo
We
Langford.
don't have Romeo
We don't
Langford
have Romeo
date of
Langford
return.
date of return.
Jaylen Brown, we will see for tomorrow game against the Suns. He is day to day, and
For
Marcus
tomorrow
Smart
game
is
against
out
the
against
Celtics,
the Suns.
and Marcus Smart is out against the Suns.
What is characteristical for this game is
What
that
is characteristical
we
for
have Peyton Pritchard
this game
return,
is
and
that
he return with
we can Peyton Pritchard
good
return,
form,
and he return with good form,
the good form, or he shines.
good form,
In
or he shines.
not only because of 8
Not
points,
only
2
because of
assists,
8
and
points,
2 rebounds,
assists, and
but
2 rebounds,
he was
but
playing
he
like
was
90
playing
minutes,
like
18 seconds
90,
as a
80
backup
seconds.
point guard. He was
Point
shooting
guard.
very
He
well,
was shooting
3 or
very well.
4 from the field, and 2,
4,
3 for 3. He was
for
not making
3.
mistakes,
He
and
was not
I
making
thought
mistakes,
that
and
he
I
was
thought that he
organizing our
was
offense very well.
organizing our offense very well.
Obviously, the story of the night is
Obviously, the
Carson
story of the night
Edwards, as
is
mentioned from our friend
mentioned
Jerome Corlo
from
from the page.
our friend
He
Jerome
had like
Corlo from the
16
page.
points,
He had like
and he was shooting
16
5
points,
of 8,
and he was shooting 5 of 8,
62% and 3 of 5
62%
for
and
3,
3 of 5
60%.
for
Carson
3,
Edwards,
60%.
obviously,
Carson
he
Edwards,
got the chance
obviously,
because
he got the chance
we
because
were in
we were
with the guard at the guard positions
with the
because we
guard
did
at the
not
guard
have
positions because we
uh,
did not have
Langford,
uh,
Smart, and Brown.
Langford, Smart, and Brown.
Carson Edwards also
Carson
scored
Edwards also scored
free throws at the very
clutch
end of the
free
game,
throws at the
and
very
it is
end of
good
the
for
game,
him.
and it is
It
good
would
for
give
him.
him confidence.
To give
I
him
think,
confidence.
like
I
Jerome
think,
said, that
like
Peyton Pritchard
said,
is
that
above
is
Carson Edwards,
above Carson
but
Edwards, but
on this game, Stevens
on
made
this
a good
game,
decision
Stevens
to
made
give
a good
more
decision
playing
to give
time to
more
Carson
playing time
Edwards,
to Carson Edwards,
like 30 minutes,
like 30
and Peyton
minutes,
Pritchard played
and
like
Peyton
19
Pritchard
minutes
played like 19
because
minutes
Carson Edwards
because
had the court
Carson
hand,
Edwards had the
and
court
that is
hand,
pretty much
and that is pretty
his
much
best
his
weapon in the
best
NBA.
weapon in the
Shooting.
NBA.
So he was shooting like
Shooting
3
like
or 5 for
3
3,
or 5 for
and I
3,
think that this is
and
the
I
good
think
decision
this is the
by
good decision
Stevens for
by Stevens
giving
for
the chance
giving
uh, to Carson Edwards,
Carson
simply
Edwards
because he was
simply
filling
because
the game
filling the
and he
game
was shooting
and he
very
was
good.
very good.
We had starters
We had
Grant
starters when
31,
31
32 minutes,
32
11
minutes,
points, 4
11
rebounds,
points,
2
4
assists,
rebounds,
plus 3 of
plus
6 shooting,
3
and
of 6 shooting,
3
and
or 4 for
3 or 4
75%. He's the
75%.
leader in the Celtics from the 3 points range,
From the
we
3
must
points
say
range,
that,
we
and
must
he
say that
is playing very useful,
very
not
useful,
making too many mistakes,
not making
and
many mistakes,
deserved to
and
start.
deserved
He did
to start. He
he did his best guarding
did
Kawhi
his
Leonard
best
and
guarding Kawhi
Los Angeles
Leonard and
Clippers forward.
Los Angeles forward.
Like Andy and I
Like
talked
Andy and
before the
I
game,
before him,
I mean,
I
Daniel
mean,
Theis had
Daniel Theis
a bad
had
game. He
bad
was
game.
minus 14,
He was minus
and he
14,
played only 8
and
minutes and 40 seconds simply because the
40
Clippers
because
centers
the Clippers
are bad
centers
matchup
are
for
matchup for
Daniel Theis.
for
Serge
Serge
Ibaka
Ibaka,
and
Serge
Zubats.
Ibaka, and
Also, Marcus
Zubats.
Morris Sr. when he's
Also,
playing
Marcus
the
Morris
center.
Sr. is playing the center.
Two best players, of course, Jason
Two best
Tatum
players,
as it should
Jason
be
Tatum, as
34
it should be
points, 7
34
rebounds, 2 assists, plus 8, Jason Tatum shooting 12 of 27, 44%, not the best, but 3, 5 of 10 or 50%, that was really important for the Celtics. Clutch, Jason Tatum is full form, and he was the true leader of the Celtics, as it should be. Kemba Walker was a pleasant surprise. He had 24 points, and he had 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 lost ball, shooting 9 of 19 or 47%. He was shooting 4 or 3, 7, 28%, but he was shooting solid from the free throws, 4 or 5 or 80%. He scored 2 for the lead in the last minute, or clutch 2, clutch jumper. Also, he scored clutch free throws. So it was his best game in the season thus far. We must say that he played really well. He was trying on the defense too, and he was trying to go to the rim, to go to the basket. Only thing that he didn't have this last night is shooting. He was shooting 28% or 2 of 7. Tristan Thompson had another 27 minutes, 11.7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 66% shooting. This is the Tristan Thompson we want. He was fighting on the rim and very useful on the floor. I thought Robert Williams gave us good minutes again from the bench in 15 minutes, 30 seconds. 10 points and 2 rebounds. Jamie Ojule, 18 minutes, 5 points, and Jeff Teague, 17 minutes, but not particularly well again. Before continue with game analysis, Danny, what can you tell us about the game?
Well, hopefully I'm not giving an echo. Again, this was a good game for the Celtics. You know, I think anybody who would have saw this game in terms of if we lost would have been able to say that you were on a level playing field with the Clippers. If you did lose, there was a few things positive to take away from the game, but at the same time, there was excuses because both teams had their second best player missing when you consider Brown and Paul George being out, and both teams had their number 4 player missing when you consider Patrick Beverly and Marcus Smart being the ones out. Of course, you lost Daniel Theis, obviously, as well in the first half of this game. He didn't return in the second half, on top of Romeo Langford, being out. But of course, Romeo Langford been out the entire season, so I don't think we can act like that's a major loss and use that as any sort of an excuse. But the fact that you can say Tatum outdueled Kawhi Leonard in that last match when it mattered most in the critical moments on the stretch says something about Jason Tatum's growth in this case. Now, obviously, will that matter when it matters most, which is the NBA playoffs, gentlemen? You can enjoy that victory last night, like I said, after the game was over, and my post that was pinned in the top of the group. But it will not matter if you do not actually do something for playoff time. You know, Danny Ainge, of course, has the ability to get his team something in terms of, adding another player to help these guys. And I think last night kind of proved, even though we won, that we need some sort of bench help. I literally kind of sparked a little bit of a laughter, but basically saying Jeff Teague at one point dancing and shaking his rear end during one of the timeouts rather than actually focusing in on the huddle. at a time when he had no points and literally two shot attempts. But to see this on a more consistent basis, that killer instinct from Kemba Walker and Jason Tatum, and even Paul said last night, asked who is the most important player? Is it Jason Tatum? And Paul Pierce said no. Jason Tatum is not your most important player right now. Kemba Walker is. Because if Kemba Walker is not playing like he did last night, this team is not going anywhere.
Okay. Now we have problems. The listeners are talking about the echo. Again, we will try to mute ourselves while talking. Somebody says that maybe having open devices are causing the echo feedback. I don't have devices. We should try to mute while we are not speaking. There is nothing more that we can do to improve the quality of our sound. Sadly. Andy, if you can speak, let's talk about Kemba Walker because a lot of Kemba Walker fans are they are excited about his game, and they should be pleased and excited about his game. But do you think that Kemba Walker is back? Do you think that Kemba Walker is legit part of the Celtics big 3-4 going to the future? Andy.
Yeah, so I've been pretty adamant, I guess, on Walker podium. Pretty much the rumor first came out that Boston season. Let me kind of make this point before I get started. I'm not saying that Kemba Walker is a bad player or that he's a bad guy. He's a good player. I think he's a fun guy to watch play. I don't think that he's really appropriate for a team that is contending for the championship. And when you look at over the last 4 or 5 championship players like Curry. You have Kyrie Irving. Lowry. And then you have I think Rondo on the Lakers. And you look at there's a couple of things that when you look at Lowry, he's a high-rated playmaker, and so he's a guy who defends well. He's not a volume shooter. Kyrie and Steph are both playmakers. You have Rondo. I think we all know Rondo is necessarily going to score a lot of points. They kind of do everything else well. Now, the issue to me with Walker is that he's a liability on defense. But steals and blocks are measured those defensive metrics. Those players that a lot of blocks, but they're not good defenders. And I think the best example bunch of blocks. But he's not a very good defender. He's slow. And the problem with Kemba, he can't get around the screen. So try to attack him, all the time. you can see the effect from that. And out of and that's leaving these leaving opposing big because our biggest or almost at the three, and they just can't act it. So really, defensive liability. If there's somebody like Steph Curry, because offensively they are going to make the problem with Kemba is he's a good and elite offensive player. In fact, I'd say Kemba he can score a lot of points, but he's not efficient doing it. And Kemba's not tremendously efficient scorer. Those players that he doesn't really do a whole lot. For a championship team, that's a nice player to have as a sixth man like me. But it's not something you want to have. 30% of your salary cap item.
Hey, Andy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When it comes to Kemba Walker, you're saying that he can't get through the screens. Do you think that's an effort, or you just think that? I mean, because defense is all about effort. So what is it that Marcus Smart can do that Kemba's not doing to get around those screens?
So I think a lot of it is asked to do. When you're in a game, I think a lot of what you do at the game is based on how you train, what you and I don't think anybody's really that type of a tenacious defender around three. Whereas Marcus Smart, all the way through the instant play. And so I think that's part of the difference. The other part is body build. Smart's smart guy, but he's 220 pounds. And that makes it a little bit easier. More body strength, and core strength really helps you when it comes to around the ring. So I think some of it is always going to struggle with that type of build. Look at very small guards who does a good job coming around this ring. But he's also very Kyle Lowry. He's a stocky guy. And then like Pat Beverly struggles on screen a lot of the time. He's a good defender. Around the screen, and he somehow has time to knock the ball out of the person's hand. And that's incredible. It's pretty rare. And Kemba just, I don't think I think maybe he could learn, but I think it would take a long time.
Okay, that's a fair assessment. You know what I'm saying? I just think that sometimes that defense is all about effort. And if you want to get over that screen, you can get over that screen. And like you said, maybe they're not asking him to do that. But at some point in time, it's going to have to be asked for him to do that, because that's going to hurt us in the long run. Him not getting over those screens. And what I see a lot of times too is that the screen's set and he doesn't try to fight through the screen. They'll just switch. And I think maybe if Brad would get away from switching all the time and having them fight through some of the picks, I think that might help. That might help us defensively, because to me, switching is okay, but it's not And at the end of the day, I think it takes more energy to switch than it is to stay on your defensive player. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that defense is a lot of effort. And I think that another thing we might overlook is that the Celtics might not have Kemba play because he doesn't really know how to do it, and they don't want him to get injured. But I agree with you. I agree with you. I think he has to be able to do that.
Okay.
I have Kemba Walker explanation. I think that Andrew. I think that Andrew. We should elaborate more on because we have been called out at our page because our friends are that Kemba Walker is returned. That Kemba Walker is a legit part of Celtics three, and that can actually win the title with Kemba Walker. Let's start with just raw statistics. Kemba Walker played 68 games. He is 16.1 points per game, 3.4 rebounds per game, 4.3 assists per game, 38.3% field goal. I repeat, 38%. Shooting for three this season, 29.8%. Below 30%. This is like Marcus Smart from the first stage. He's shooting 87%. His efficiency field goal percent. Season 45%. Which is horrible. Now, people will say he was injured. Only played 8 games, and we should give him a time. It will improve. It will not. Why? Because he played 669 in Charlotte and Boston. Second season. Now, his efficiency is still below 50%. Is 48.6%. So throughout whole career, highly inefficient. Now his pair are according to is 11.8 in 8 games. Average PER of the player or players index 15. So he's below average. This is not what Igor is saying. Go to MP page and check. Now let's go splits. For example, we asked about his defense and offense. His offensive rating in let me see. 8 games, 108.3. Which means that he's scoring 108.3 points per 100 possessions. His defensive rating is 110.7, which means that we are allowing 110.7 points per 100 possessions. So net rate is offensive rating minus defensive rating is minus 2.4. So with Kemba Walker on the floor, our opponents are outscoring Boston by 2.4 points per one. And those are exact stats. Now, assist ratio is like 19.2, which is like very low for the point guard. Rebounding percent very low. Efficiency percent, efficiency ball percent, 45%. 45% in 8 games is 49.6%. And usage rate almost 30%. 28.5%. Which means that he cannot say that he is not used. That means that 28.5% offense on the floor is going through Kemba Walker. And Boston Celtics pace is 100.98. So to sum up, he's highly inefficient. He is shooting career 42% field goal and 36% for three, which is not blistering. 84% free throw, which is true shooting and efficiency. They are below 50%. PER is below average. And you don't have to watch Kemba Walker. He's not playing well. This is mathematics. Exact science. So this is not like skiing or ski jumping or I don't know. Discipline where you can give pressure. You can see I'm giving Kemba Walker for his impressions. Very good. But Boston worse with him on the floor. And his maximum contract. Never forget that. He's wasting our money for maximum contract. And he's constantly in. So, in my personal opinion, alongside loss of Gordon Hayward, one of the biggest mistakes of Danny Ainge. Because by signing those two players, Danny Ainge occupied maximum salary cap, and we didn't get anything in return. Kemba Walker defenders are saying that he played against Philadelphia 76ers last season in the first round. But let me be mean, man. That last year, Philadelphia 76ers could not be considered an elite team. They were falling apart from the bottom to the rock. From the top to the bottom. They were total mess. He played the good series again. And he played well against the Clippers. But he played bad in many games. You know, he played more bad games against the top 5 teams in the Western Conference than good games. And you could not just give him a pass by saying he's in time, he's a good guy. He should be the third scoring option. And he's very efficient. And he's not. End of story. Kevin, you wanted something?
Yeah, let me ask you a question on that, Igor, though. Okay, so, we see that Kemba came to Boston, and this was the first time he's gotten out of the first round of the playoffs.
Okay.
I don't know if it hurt. I don't know if it hurt him or helped him by not being in the Boston Garden and doing the playoffs, because I think that does help. I think that does help him. But he was in the bubble. Okay, now we know that there was some injuries that he had obtained during the bubble period of the game. But I think the Toronto series, he just didn't. I don't think he just shot. I don't think he shot well.
Yes.
And I think that with him, sometimes if his most players, I think that's having a problem shooting. They try to play better defense, and once you play better defense, then your offense will flow in with the game. And I think that might be a problem with Kemba. Like Andy said, as far as his defense is concerned, he's a defensive liability. So I think what has to happen with Kemba is he has to be a better shooter. Okay, he has to be percentage wise a better shooter than what he is right now, because he's not putting any pressure on the defense for them to stop him. You know what I'm saying? If he's going to ball out, that kind of balances off their offense and the defense in a sense, because now you're more worried about him offensively you are defensively. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying he got to put up Steph Curry numbers, but he has to be a threat. You know, and right now I don't see him being a threat right now. I don't see him being a threat right now.
Yep.
So I get your point. And I agree with you on everything you said about, you know, I think Kemba was a Band-Aid that they put on the dam, and there's other holes in there because they didn't think that that Gordon, I mean that Al Horford was going to leave like he did. I think that caused them to overreact on getting Kemba. You know what I'm saying? So you as fans, we was like, okay, that's cool because we seen Kemba play against us. We seen Kemba do his thing against us, but we didn't see him play in the playoffs. Okay, but the biggest issue I have with Kemba right now is that I lost my train of thought. The biggest issue I have with Kemba right now is that him not being in the playoffs prior to coming to Boston and being so healthy in Charlotte, and it comes to Boston, and now we find out that he got knee issues.
Yes.
I have a problem with Danny Ainge. The same thing with Al Horford.
Absolutely.
I don't want to put Gordon Hayward in that situation because that wasn't self-inflicted on him.
Yeah.
It just became an issue from that point on. But the free agents that we have signed has come there with some type of health issue. After they get there, now they got these health issues. You know what I'm saying? And that's the problem I'm having is you're giving these guys max contracts and they're sitting out games. And I want to get Andy's take on this also, and maybe even Daniel's.
Okay.
Did Kemba really need to sit out as many games as he sat out, or were they just being cautious about the situation? Because the way he's playing right now, he plays a little reckless. He's taking a lot of charges, and every time he falls on the ground, I get that Gordon Hayward feeling in my stomach, like, oh, is he going to get back up? You know what I'm saying? So I want to get Daniel's take or Andrew's take on that.
Before that, Bruce Robert said, very true, Kevin Dixon. More efficient for sure. Again, Kevin, people is getting really mad at us. They are saying what we are seeing. Again,
well, what we're doing is telling the truth. We're telling them the truth.
If you want to watch anything else, you should watch some other channels, or fan pages. Or on those pages, growing, butterflies, summer, honey is flowing everywhere.
honey is flowing everywhere.
We are trying
We are
to
trying
analyze
to
the complete statistics.
And again,
This is not like my
my
impression.
impression.
You got, I studied mathematics.
Studied mathematics science.
We have exact numbers are never lie.
Or never lie.
Doc Rivers said,
Rivers
you
said,
are what your
you
record.
are what your record is showing.
You can spin it
You
whatever
can
you want.
spin it whatever you want.
But at the end of the day,
At the end of the day,
your
you
statistics
are
and records are saying in the end.
records are saying in the end.
And another comment from
And another comment from
Kevin, I like Kemba.
I like
Unfortunately,
Kemba.
he's like liability on defense.
Liability on
But
defense.
most point guards are.
Most point
The
guards
only problem is,
Only
I
problem
wish
is,
he would
I
be
wish
more of
he would be more
playmaker and
of
facilitator.
playmaker and
I will leave
facilitator.
that to Andy. Daniel,
Daniel of
Danny,
Everybody's mute but me.
Danny.
Okay.
Danny.
Danny.
All right. Igor's kind of went out there. Just got the it's been out for 2 hours. Jaylen Brown is out tomorrow night against the Phoenix Suns alongside Romeo Langford and Marcus.
Daniel, can I ask you a question? What is now I haven't seen Romeo on the bench at all. Does he have a cast on his hand? Does he have a soft cast? What is the situation with him? Because a break is what you have a cast on about 6 to 8 weeks, correct?
Yeah, depending on the severity of the injury.
And he hurt his hand during the playoffs last season, which was what in July, I think, or something like that. Well, I mean, he did he hurt it? He hurt it in the Toronto series, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't play in against the Heat. Okay, then we had 71 days off, which was a whole month. So that's 6 weeks right there. That's 2 months right there, and now we're going into almost a 5-month stint with this guy not playing. I'm having an issue with this thing right here. Somebody needs it. Something's just not feeling right to me about this guy's about his hand or what the situation is with his hand, because he should have been back by now.
Well, you're not the only one in this situation. I'm losing confidence when it comes to the medical staff with the Boston Celtics.
I agree.
Too many setbacks with too many players.
I would like to hear Andy asking about very interesting question about Kemba Walker and liability on the defense, and I wish playmaker and facilitator. I will say a couple of words about the defense. Andy explained. His problem is that he is short. He has only 6 or 6'3", whatever. Maybe 6, even 6'1". So his problem is he's small. Another problem is that obviously having problems fighting over screens. So Kevin said the part of the problem is effort. He has tired legs, not trying enough on the screens. Now he can be good in stealing the ball. He has quick hands. But about being a playmaker or the main facilitator, I have a problem with that. Because, like I said, throughout his whole career, he has been more of a shooting guard or off-ball guard and less than the two-point guard. So you saw when you pair him Marcus Smart or other two-point guard, he's playing better when he's coming off the screens and he's playing catch and shoot guard. And this is exactly why Boston is struggling. I wrote article and saying that actually because we were very dangerous when we had starting five of Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown at the wings, and Daniel Theis. So we had like Gordon Hayward as the true point guard. He's a tall guy. He has and he can pass. He can manipulate the other defenses. He can pass. Now you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. They both can catch and shoot, but they both can create for themselves. So when you put diamond formation for those five guys or five out formations, you can do whatever you want. You can play 4-5 offense, you can play 5-0 offense. Everybody can shoot, can pass, can score, can create. You have first action, you have secondary action. Pick on the side for Jason Tatum, treat Jason Tatum as a screener. Screen the wrist screener. The wrist screener is really dangerous. By losing, and I mean replacing him with Jeff. Obviously, we didn't get too much because he is underperforming. Some bench guys step up. We talk about Peyton Pritchard and catch and get us. But this is the big question. Can those guys be true point guards? Andy and I talked. Marcus probably the best point guard right away at the team, but still, Kemba Walker should be facilitator and pick and roll ball handler. But that's not his nature. Simple as that. He used to be a facilitator, catch and shoot guy in Charlotte. And here is that kind of opportunities. Maybe that's why he's not shining. Others say.
So, I agree that the issue defensively with playing Kemba Walker. I think that the first and the biggest issue to me is that when you watch the game, it's pretty obvious that the Celtics as a team that they don't trust Kemba Walker defensively. So, and I can tell that because even before the person he's defending, even before Kemba loses him, one of the Celtics, whether it's a wing or our big, is already coming to provide help defense. And I think that's one of the most telling things. That's saying, like, if I'm coming to help you on defense before you need help, that says everything I need to know. That says that I don't trust you to hold up your end defensively. And that's led to a lot of those open perimeter shots that have killed us. It's led to a lot of easy points in the paint because our big man, no big man in the league, I don't care how elite he is, no big man in the NBA is going to defend the paint if he's out by the perimeter. You physically cannot do it. Even Taco can't do it if he dives, lying lengthwise across the court. You just can't do that. And then I think the other thing that fans miss is that because of Kemba's struggles on the perimeter with the switches, it makes it so that Boston can't play a more traditional defensive big because bigs either switch on the end or switch on the perimeter or they drop back to defend the paint. If you have to cover for a guard who can't come over a screen, your big man has to switch on the perimeter. He has to be able to switch. Otherwise, at playoff level basketball, you're going to get bombed to death by somebody who can come around the screen and fire. So, we look at the East, the Sixers, they have Seth Curry. They have Tyrese Maxey as a rookie, looks like he can do it. Shake Milton can do it. The Brooklyn Nets, they have Kyrie Irving, James Harden. Those are both guys who will come around the screen and they're going to fire and they're going to bury you in three-pointers. So on the playoff level, you have to bring your big out to defend that perimeter switch. But if you do that, you can't play a lot of these more traditional bigs that we want. Guys like Andre Drummond. Drummond can't switch. So as long as we have Kemba, it's all well and good to say trade for Andre Drummond. He's not going to do us a lot of good. He's going to have the problem that we had with Cantor. Cantor couldn't switch. That's why Enes Kanter didn't see the floor a lot with Kemba. And then you look, same thing, Miles Turner. How do they usually play Turner? A lot of times they have him drop. The reason is that they had Oladipo and Brogdon, and now they have, eventually after injury, they'll have LeVert and Brogdon. And even now they have Brogdon and Holiday. And those are all guards that can reliably come around the screen. And so you see where that's different. It's easier for a big to be an elite defender if he just has to drop back and guard the paint. It's a lot harder when you have to be, as a big man on that screen, you have to be thinking, like, is the guard going to come around the screen? Do I have to come up to defend this guard? Do I have to drop back? How far do I drop back? Do I go to the free throw line? Can I afford to stand a little bit back behind the free throw line? Is this guy, how much faster than me is this guy? How much do I have to rotate my hips to cover him? It's a lot more difficult for a big man to do that than just drop back and defend the paint. There's a lot, it requires a lot more intellect. We got away with it. Boston got away with it for years because Horford was one of the rare bigs that could process all of that information and make the right decision most of the time. And he was still big enough to defend a lot of more traditional guys. We struggle now because you have Daniel Theis. And Theis is a great guy for his contract. But he's not Al Horford. Al Horford is an all-star that got a max contract. Daniel Theis is a guy we're paying, $5 million a year or whatever it is? I mean, if Theis was able to do what Horford did for $5 million, we could probably trade him for a star, Yes. But I think that's my issue. That's the issue with Kemba Walker in defense is it's very limiting for Boston. It limits us in a lot of ways in terms of how we play our bigs. And the other thing that limits us that we don't talk about is Smart not being a reliable scorer. So you saw the Golden State Warriors get away with Steph Curry because of how good Klay Thompson is. Because you could put, because Klay Thompson has pretty much, I would say, the same level of defensive capability as Smart does.
Yep.
He doesn't get the stats, but he is one of the best defenders. At the guard position, the thing is, Warriors can put Klay out there. But when they go, when they put Smart out there, instead of say we put Smart out, Smart rotates in instead of Kemba, we lose a significant chunk of offense to do that. And I think that's something that should be also taken into account with our defense, because it's hard when you have, as a coach, and I'm not forgiving Brad Stevens for bad decisions, but it's hard as a coach when you have to make a decision between, do I want to score points or do I want to prevent points? Because that's kind of the option.
Hey, Andrew, Andy, let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. For everything that you said now is if you really understand how the Celtics were built, right? Danny Ainge had what he needed in Gordon Hayward and Al Horford, okay? But for some reason or another, they end up leaving the team, okay? Now, I'm sure they had a conversation with Jason and Jaylen about the situation that this team's been put in now, because you've gotten away from what you've tried to build now. And now you're just going along for the ride, what it looks like to me, when it comes to the Celtics, because everything that you're saying makes a whole lot of sense now. Why they went after Al Horford, why they went after Gordon, okay? Because they all could do what needed to be done, and now we have nobody on the team that does exactly what they were doing offensively or defensively. So my question to you, Andy, is this right here. Okay, with the trade exception coming up, who who would be a guard that you think that could come in and facilitate the ball and play good defense? And who's a big do you think that Celtics could get that could come in and defend the pick and roll?
So that's a pretty good question. I've kind of given it a lot of thought to it. At this point, I mean, I almost feel like at this point with Horford being gone and with Hayward being gone, and I've talked about this a little bit with Igor. I actually posted up an article on the Facebook page. I think honestly the best option for Boston at this point is to hit like a 1 to 2 year reset button. And to do that, what I was saying is we trade Kemba Walker and some combination of young players, like our young bench guys, and we do a 3-way trade with somebody like the Mavericks and the Pelicans, and we bring in somebody like Lonzo Ball, and we bring in a player like Dallas. We could bring somebody like THJ, and THJ is a guy a lot of fans, it doesn't move the needle for him. He's just a role player. But he's a guy, he can play small shooting guard, he could play small forward, he could shoot okay, he could play some team defense, he could contribute to a few other stats. He's one of those guys you could either plug him in as a spot starter or you can play him in big minutes off the bench. He's going to contribute either way. And that would really help our rotation a lot. Lonzo Ball, he's been up and down, kind of all over the place with his development. But he also got moved around a lot. Like, let's remember, he hasn't had an easy NBA career because even when he was in the Lakers in that last year, everybody knew he was on the trade market for AD. His shot is obviously a big problem, but I also think that Lonzo is a lot better as your third or fourth option as opposed to being the 2 or 3 option that he's been asked to be throughout his career so far. In Boston, we're not saying, hey, Lonzo, you got to be an elite scoring point guard. We're saying, hey, go out there and be a floor general and play some team defense. And I think those are things that he can do. Defensively, he struggled a lot at the start of his career. He looked better in New Orleans. He sort of regressed a little bit since he came back from injury. But I think that with the Celtics defensive system and the defensive culture there, I mean, Ball has all the physical attributes to develop into a decent team defender. And he's also the type of player that Brad Stevens has a history of doing really well working with. Yeah, I think that's something you take into account too, because Stevens does have a history of doing really well with these young guys. And I think that that's something that's valuable to consider too. And then, you hit a 1 to 2 year reset. In another year or two, you have Lonzo Ball, you have Jaylen Brown, you have Jason Tatum. And then you could either re-sign THJ on a cheaper contract or you can let him go and get $18 million of cap space to use. And, you have a lot of flexibility with that. I think that sets us up pretty well. The problem is finding a big man. Big man's always hard, but if we could fix that point guard position to the point that we have a point guard that can defend the perimeter reliably, that opens us up a lot more. We have a lot more options in what big man do we want. All of a sudden, we could look at guys like Andre Drummond, on the cheaper end. We could look at guys like, like Valanciunas. There's another guy you could maybe look at if you have somebody who can reliably defend the perimeter. Basically, the options go up a lot when you can just drop your big back to defend. I mean, we could look at somebody like Brook Lopez, who was doing really well with blocks in Milwaukee when he was allowed to just drop and defend the paint. So there's a lot more options that we could consider once we have a point guard that defends the perimeter. It gives us more flexibility in terms of what big man are we going to bring in to build, to help this team out. And I think a lot of that just, it's that 1 to 2 year button. And honestly, is it really a reset button? Because we've seen how well the Celtics play with Brown and Tatum, without Walker. So are we really doing that much of a reset button by taking a year, step back a year or two, let the Nets get weirder with, KD and Harden and Kyrie's weird personalities all being there? I mean, they're going to implode within 2 to 3 years, if not this year. And then in that 1 to 2 years, when they're gone, Boston has 3 talented young players as a core, plus whatever big we sign. And, we figure we keep, Smart, and then we keep somebody like, probably Peyton Pritchard, maybe we keep, or maybe Time Lord. Time Lord, I think, could be a great big man for us if we can just drop him into the paint and stop asking him to switch because he gets confused as hell on switches. So we have a lot of potential if we just take a step back for a year and say, hey, we're not really contending for a title this year, which is, I mean, that's the truth.
But nobody wants to admit it, Andy. I mean, if you, it's a dirty little secret in the Celtics world. You know, if you say that, you're a witch. You know, I mean, you're the curse. If you say you're not winning the title this year, you're a bad guy. You are a weak guy. You are a Lakers fan or whatever. Pretending like we are the
Igor, well, Igor, didn't they say? Isn't everybody on the page saying we're going to be good in 4 to 5 years? Isn't that what they're talking about now? You know what I'm saying? So you can't have it both ways. You know what I'm saying? As a true Celtic fan, of course we want to see them win a championship right now. Okay, we want to see them win championships all the time. But the way the NBA is built now, it's going to take a lot of hard work, and it's going to take the right players to come to Boston and play. And the one Isaiah Chisholm said he has a question. He says, "Do we have any concerns with Brad Stevenson as a coach? Are there any deficiencies in his coaching game you guys have noticed?"
Absolutely. Let me answer. I mean, that is a good guy. He had, like I saw at the page, 330 wins. Very good. But he reached Eastern Conference Finals with the Celtics. And in the Celtics world, that is not enough. And he's very good in developing young guys, like Andy mentioned. He has deficiencies like we saw 2019. It's obvious that he cannot manage egos and he cannot coach the stars. He cannot coach the stars at the same team. That was his deficiency. That's his bad side. It was mess in the Celtics locker room 2019. He's bad in communicating with the players. That's why he brought in like 19, 20 assistant coaches. I never saw in my life one coach with more assistant coaches. I'm okay with that if that is helping Brad Stevens, of course. Another thing, putting the starting lineups and managing the rotations. I mean, I understood now that in his world, in Brad Stevens' world, the first 30 games or so, they are just experimental games, you know. He's experimenting with the lineups. He's experimenting with the rotations. I mean, I got used to that, you know. But somehow I wish that he figure out the rotations before January every year, you know, and that he's rotating well. And another thing, when the playoff comes, he's managing the Celtics like this is the college team. He's playing like 10, 11 guys. I mean, I understand that he wants to keep everybody happy, but that's not how the way how the things are going in the NBA. You know, you have top five players. Top five players must play like 40 minutes per game. Then you have 3 or 4 guys that you can give the minutes in the playoffs, 20, 25 minutes, and that's all. You cannot play like 10 or 11 players. And another thing that we saw this year, he was good in throughout 7 years. His defense was always good. His defense was always something that we can build on. This year, due to personnel that Andy was talking about, you know, because we have too many holes in our defensive system, you know, this year our defense is dropping, you know, and despite we can be optimistic about the progress of our young players, our defense is something for concern, you know, because if we are going to give up like 110 plus points per game in the playoffs, we could not score enough, you know, to overcome our bad defense. We are not Brooklyn Nets that they have offensive talent to score you 140 points per game every single night. We must play the strong defense. And this is the reason for concern when you have undersized guards and, you know, you have injury problems. That's it from me. Daniel, your return. Do you want something to say about Brad Stevens?
Well, I know for a fact, guys, hopefully you can hear me.
Very well.
that I said it yesterday during the game itself that there were a few things with that game that you can say Brad Stevens has made a history out of. A perfect example, how in the world do you go with a three big man rotation to start the game? You know, Daniel Theis, Tristan Thompson, and Grant Williams. And we saw how that game started. Yes, you won in the end in this situation, but you went down pretty big to start that game before ultimately having to call a timeout, and ultimately he took Daniel Theis out of the game before putting Peyton Pritchard in, and ultimately that game finally turned around. Even Brian Scalabrine admitted it during that period. This three big man lineup is causing Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker to not get the space they need in order to really get the shots they need to get in order to really heat up and get themselves going. And we saw that in this case. We saw the difference. When you came to the second half, Brad Stevens decided not to go back. Of course, Daniel Theis was injured, so who knows? Maybe if Theis was able to play, he would have gone back to it for all we know in this situation. But Daniel Theis didn't get to play, and he had no choice but to avoid it. And the third quarter, the Celtics dominated and ended up going into the fourth quarter with a lead in this situation. We've seen Brad Stevens kind of show there are certain players that he has some sort of a soft spot for. I said yesterday, Grant Williams had a pretty decent game. I'm willing to admit it. But there are certain players, when it comes to certain games versus certain teams, I think are better qualified to get the minutes. Last night, I felt someone like Semi Ojeleye would have been better to play because of the fact that you're looking to go toe-to-toe with the Los Angeles Clippers and Kawhi Leonard. If you don't have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum available to go toe-to-toe defending someone like Kawhi, why are you going to go with somebody who history already tells you officials do not give any respect to when it comes to him on the defensive end? Literally, how many times can we say Grant Williams plays some decent defense and a bullcrap call is made against him, and he looks at the officials and with his hands up and basically says, "What? I didn't do nothing." And even Brad Stevens got his hand up like, "You gotta be kidding me." Last night, it wasn't even a minute into the game, and Brad Stevens had a technical foul called against himself in this situation. You know, and he had no choice but to swallow the whistle pretty much, or close his mouth the rest of the game to avoid being kicked out of the game the rest of the way. But we've seen him jump off the bench many times, jump off his seat. We've seen him literally jump into the air like he's an acrobat or something like that when it comes to calls behind Grant Williams. Semi Ojeleye, in my opinion, in games when you're going toe-to-toe with Kawhi, going toe-to-toe with Durant, going toe-to-toe with LeBron, I would rather see Semi play, not so much because I think he's a better player than Grant in terms of offense or anything like that, but because going with a player that can get better respect from the officials is 1/3 of the NBA game, ladies and gentlemen. That is one thing I have said consistently as the hearing interesting. That is one thing I have basically said as the admin of this group since I created this group all those years ago in this situation. That you are going to go toe-to-toe not only with these stars that the league basically is going to continue to try and rise up while you basically have your players, but you got to go toe-to-toe with the NBA officials. You think I'm lying, ladies and gentlemen? Go back to when we had real stars that were at the top of their game and we really had a championship contender, a.k.a. Garnett, Pierce, and Allen. What happened the moment we had another team step in our way that had bigger stars on their team, a.k.a. the Miami Heat with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh? What was the one thing, you guys, that basically cost us the opportunity to really get back to winning a championship? when those guys came together. It wasn't that LeBron, Bosh, and Wade were better and more talented. It was the fact that you were going toe-to-toe not only with them, but with the NBA officiating and the NBA's hope that those three playing in the finals would have better ratings. This season, I am not denying, ladies and gentlemen, that Tatum and Brown have some incredible talent. I don't think any four of us in this video chat or any of our guests on our radio show would be denying that type of stuff. We're saying they do not have enough talent to overcome a team like Brooklyn that has Harden, Durant, and Irving on top of three officials that you know will be doing the bidding of the NBA, especially in a season like this where there's no fans, no ching-ching is coming in from the ticket sales, or from the food being sold in the arenas, or from the cars coming in to park in the arena, parking garage. Trust me, we've all been there, Kevin, going into the arenas to watch the games ourselves in this case. They all bank on those things. Which matchup is going to cause the ratings to skyrocket? New York, aka Brooklyn type matchup with LeBron and the Lakers, or a matchup of the Celtics and the Lakers in this season? Which one is going to cause the money to come in through the ratings more? I'm sorry. As much as I hate it, we all know that's what's going to end up happening. Unless some sort of miracle from the heavens come down and a leg gets broken in Brooklyn by Kevin Durant, or a broken arm comes for Kyrie, or somebody gets shot in the ass, something like that. There ain't no way that matchup isn't going to happen. Milwaukee's not going to stop it. Philly's not going to stop it. We're not going to stop it. That's the truth. So that is the only thing that has me saying we can be good this year, you guys. We have the talent to get all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. We can knock off Philly. We've already proven we can knock off Milwaukee. We've gone toe-to-toe, showing we can knock off the Lakers, even though we lost to them. It took some crazy stuff in that game in order for them to beat us, and we just knocked off the Clippers just last night. But ultimately, come playoff time, we have one thing that has always stopped us, and that's the NBA officials. Even if Danny Ainge makes some sort of moves, the NBA officials have the ultimate power. The same thing I say with politics. The politicians have the powers in this country, and they basically determine how things go, not the actual citizens. So, Igor, that's how we got to look at it. Our guys are good enough to basically, in a straight, fair game, but not in a season when we know the NBA is desperate to make sure the money is being replaced, that they're losing thanks to the fans not being there.
I actually Danny today one post. I don't want to comment too much about the game. You wrote other guys at the page, wrote everything about the game, but Mike, I think our friend Mike Bergen from CLNS, he posted like how Kawhi Leonard is getting 14 free throws and Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker 5. Or Kawhi Leonard is having more free throws and Abdul All-Star with 5. That's the catch. That's the catch. And the people do not get it. I mean, official explanation is because Kawhi Leonard is going to the ring, and because he's going more often to the ring, he's getting free throws. Some of those free throws are just phantom goals. So, in another words, Kawhi Leonard is recognized superstar of the NBA. Nobody from the Celtics is. This is something the Celtics fans don't want to accept. Somebody at our page compared Tatum and Brown to young LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard. First, I cannot remember anything. Correct me. When was the time when Kawhi Leonard got, I think he got under 25 years, or the oldest he was 25 years when he won the title with the Spurs and when he was MVP. I could be wrong, but
You're about correct at that.
when 25 or between 23, I cannot remember. That was the first time. LeBron James was in the finals. The Cleveland Cavaliers 2009. He was like 25. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they are 24. Their fans will say, okay, they have like 3 more years before they are in their primes. We will see. But if you compare Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, those players, LeBron James is top 5 of all the times. There is even the best of all the times, or Michael Jordan right now. I mean, if you compare them, they be correct. Kevin Durant and James Harden and Russell Westbrook, they were with Oklahoma City Thunder in the big finals in the years of 22. And what the Celtics fans are saying right now for Jason Tatum and they are all do not attack them. They are young. Well, if you compare them with those players, then compare Kevin Durant from age 22, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown from age 22. Our players, they have 3 Eastern Conference finals. Those players, they led their teams to the finals. LeBron James led Cleveland Cavaliers with the starting 5 of Zidonas Ilgauskas, Sasha Pavlovic, and some guys I cannot remember. I forgot somebody. And
you're
telling me that. Say.
This is what our fans got to realize. You look at the 2018 with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. Okay, they made Perkins better. They made Rondo better. Okay, superstars. That's what they do. They make their team better. Jaylen and Jason are not doing that right now. Okay, they're scoring points and they're winning games, but they're not making the players around them better. Once they start doing that, then you can say they have arrived. Because how do you play? Jason Tatum played 40 minutes and had 2 assists. That's crazy. How do you do that? I mean, come on. It's not that hard to give out assists if you really think about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Let me see. You had Kemba had 4 assists. Teague had 4 assists. Okay, and Thompson had 3. You know, and I'm just saying this. Sometimes you make basketball harder than what it is, because if you make the game easy for your players around you, then you get that superstar status. Okay,
Yes.
Jaylen and Jason doesn't do that.
Nope.
And what I'm starting to see is one takes a turn, the other one takes a turn. Then Kemba tries to take a turn, and he may be failing at it. Then Jason may take his turn. Then Jaylen may take his turn. And the thing about it is, if they play within themselves, or play within the game, or play within what Brad Stevens is trying to teach them, then they get that. Then they'll start getting that all-star calls because they're making everybody else around them better. That means you cannot double him no more, because he's going to make sure he gets the right person the ball in the right position. You know what I'm saying? So our fans got to realize that right now, because, and we've talked about this before with Andy, and I said Jason and Jaylen need to average about anywhere from 6 to 8 assists a game. You do that, now the defender don't know if you're going to shoot it or if you're going to pass it off. But right now they know they're going to more or less shoot the ball, then pass the ball off if you're getting 2 assists. Come on, Basketball is not brain surgery, man. It's not that hard.
Absolutely.
Not that hard.
Absolutely.
And so when we face Lakers and when we face Clippers, you know that Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James are going, and Anthony Davis, they are going to have more free throws than Tatum and Brown and Kemba Walker combined. You know that's going to happen because that's the way it is working in the NBA. And the Celtics fans, they have troubles to understand that. We keep on saying that is keep on repeating, and they still do not get it, you know. I mean, that's the way it is working in the NBA. Now, like Danny said, they are super talented. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, nobody is denying they are close to the stardom, but they are not there yet. And I mean, about other players, I talked to Andy previously. You know, the Celtics fans, they think that only Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are progressing from the young players in this league, and that everybody else is sleeping and regressing. This is like that's what the Celtics fans are thinking. Well, I had list and I posted the list to Andy and to the fan that asked me about 10 young players who are right now playing well in this league. For example, Luka Doncic, he's 27 points per game. He's 8.8 points per game. He's 9.4 assists per game. I will repeat. He's 9.4 assists per game. He's making Dallas, he's taking Dallas on his backs. 1 steals per game, 0.7 blocks per game. You know, you have Donovan Mitchell from Utah, 23 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, 4.6 assists per game. You have Trae Young from Atlanta, 26.6 points per game, 4.2 rebounds per game, and what's the most important, 9 assists per game. And Jason Tatum is 4 assists per game, and Jaylen Brown is 3.1 assists per game, 3.6 assists per game. When Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, like Kevin said, are between 6 and 8 assists per game, they can be considered the superstars. Then, of course, you have the guy from the Suns that is posting like 23 points and 3.4 rebounds, 3.6. I mean, you have a couple of more players. You have Ja Morant. You have, I mean, they are not superstars, but they are upcoming players. So it's not like only Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are progressing. You have like 10 to 12 players. Tonight, did you watch Halliburton? He just closed on the Denver Nuggets. The guy is fantastic. The guy is amazing. Do you watch NBA games, dear Celtics fans? Do not cave in only in the Celtics land. You know, everybody's playing basketball. Many players are progressing. And when somebody said that LeBron James is regressing and that Kawhi Leonard is regressing, LeBron James is having the best career year, man. He is going to be MVP. You know, and look at his rankings, like 25 points, 7.8 rebounds, 7.7 assists, and like being leisure. I mean, and somebody saying he's going to be like regressing. He can play like 3 years on this level freely. And Kawhi Leonard, they're saying he's regressing. He's having like 26 points, like 5.6. I mean, he's still MVP when he wants to be. So you cannot count on. They are thinking, the Celtics fans, that the players, the superstars, other superstars, they will just disappear from the league. You know, they will be injured. They will go to other country. They will be kidnapped by the Martians. You know, LeBron will retire. Kawhi will retire. You know, and I don't know what will happen to Giannis Antetokounmpo and from trio from Brooklyn. You know, that is not going to happen. Golden State Warriors, the Celtics fans are saying, will the same from Golden. Danny and I have been saying many times, the Golden State Warriors scenario is not going to happen because that was unique case. Golden State Warriors had a lot of luck with drafting the good players. Then the players from other teams like Tim Duncan, like Kobe Bryant, like Dirk Nowitzki, you know, they retired or they went to the Eastern Conference. And then They got lucky with supporting cast, and also they got Kevin Durant, and they formed the best super team in the history of the NBA. This is not going to happen in Boston.
Well, I think
Say.
I mean, like, I think that what a lot of times happens is that as fans, sometimes we get stuck in, I guess, a bubble, you would say, where only our own team exists. Or because we watch it's natural. We watch our own team. So, you know, that's the team that we watch. And that, we look at Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, say, oh, they're the best players on the Celtics. They're great players. But we don't watch other players in the league as much because, why am I going to tune into a Dallas Mavericks game to watch Luka? Because I'm not a Mavericks fan. Now I will because I'm a Luka Doncic fan. But
I watched him live. I watched him live in Belgrade. He buried my team at the age of 16. Andy, he buried my team when he was 16.
Yeah, I watched Luka a lot in Real. When he played on Real, and I thought he was going to be an elite NBA player then. It's the same thing though. I looked at at Halliburton. I said I think that kid's going to be able to make an impact in his first year in the NBA. That's why if you read on the Facebook page, I was very adamant that we should be trading him to try to select him because I saw him as being a player who could make an immediate impact on the team. But I think that the thing that we need to remember is that it's not just in the stats or their skill level. I mean, I don't like LeBron James. I think he's arrogant, and I think he's annoying as all get out. But the fact is that if you look at that Cavaliers team that LeBron took to his last finals in Cleveland, that was, I call it the Cleveland Clown Posse because if you look at the players around them.
Or the 2009. I will Google the team, 2009.
Yeah.
Please
look at LeBron's team. You just have to look at the team that beat us in 17-18. I mean, they were starting J.R. Smith, and J.R. Smith put up the same numbers in starter minutes that I put up sitting on my couch watching the game. And I don't know how that worked. And I did accidentally, pass the ball out to LeBron and lose game one either.
Yes.
But, my point is like you look at, but that's how great LeBron is he was good enough to elevate that cast of players around him to be able to go to a championship. And, to Kevin's point, that's not something we've seen from JT and JB. Now, I think they can get there. I think Jaylen Brown especially, he is such a high IQ player. I think he could be an elite playmaker. He just needs more time and more experience doing it. But at this point, they are not there. And, like fans, fans on the Facebook page love to criticize us when we make a mistake in preseason analysis. But that's all it is. It's all speculation. It's based, this is the best speculation we can make based on the past and what we've seen previously. Mm-hmm. It's not guaranteed to happen. So, thinking that Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, I think they are the most versatile of the upcoming young players. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't really translate into anything until they're actually playing on that level. Until you are playing on LeBron James' level, it's the same reason I said that Zion was so overrated. Right. Everybody is saying Zion Williamson's the next LeBron. He has all the physical. I was like, you can't tell me that somebody who has never played an NBA game is the next version of somebody that's been to how many championships?
Hey, Andrew, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back a little bit on this one. Okay, so as a Celtic fan, they're 72. I think 72 when they went in a double overtime with the Phoenix Suns. Okay, so you had JoJo White go on there, Paul Westball. Okay, they're going back and forth with each other. We talking about a point guard to another point guard, and Paul Westball probably could have been the two at the time. I don't remember, but that team went back and forth with each other. They was fighting to win that game. Okay, I'm gonna move a little bit. I'm gonna move up some more. Larry Bird against Dominic Wilkins in the playoffs. Game 7. They going back and forth. Bird got 39. I think Dominic ended up with 43. But they went at each other. Okay? We move further up, and we're going to look at the game. That game 7 for the Celtics and the Cavs in 08. I can't remember if it was game 7 or not. But you look at LeBron, Cleveland Cavaliers, and you look at Paul Pierce. Okay, so you got two guys going at each other, and scoring wise, everybody else doing whatever else they have to do. We don't have that player on that team right now that can do that. Okay, and that's what we're missing. Okay, and I don't know if it's one of them can't figure out who's gonna be the dominant one or not. Me personally, I like Jaylen Brown because he got the dog in him to be that guy. I think I would love for him to be that guy. But I would take it from either one of those guys. But that's the issue that we're having right now is that they can't go toe to toe with the best player on other teams when it comes to the playoffs because we're too inconsistent offensively or what we want to run. I mean, if you watch them play, nobody knows who is the go-to person. I mean, like the one game they ran the play at the last second, and I think Theis ended up with the ball, and somebody else ended up with the ball to shoot, and I'm like, that didn't make any sense. But we don't have that guy on the team right now that you can say, yo, I need you to give me 45 tonight because he's gonna give us 45. You know what I'm saying? On a 7-game series. That's what we need, and we don't have that right now.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, when you look at like the big three, a lot of the big three, and I think that between the three of them, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, they were able to recognize when a player like Paul Pierce against LeBron, when he was having that night and he was locked in and he was going to go and do his thing, they recognized that and they would get him the ball. They did what they could to help him. And that's what I don't see with this Celtics team. And that's from the coach, from Brad Stevens, all the way down. Like, I think I know the game you're talking about this season where I want to say it was like Grant Williams or something took like a last minute shot or something. It was something like that. And it was one of those games, I forget who it was. It might have been Jaylen Brown had been on fire all game. And I'm saying that I'm like, as a coach, as a team, in that clutch moment, you have to say, like, look, JB's been on fire. He was shooting like something like 50% or something like something ridiculous like that. Like, you have to realize that you have to be, okay, he's on fire. We are going to get, hey, JB, you're on fire tonight. We're going to get you the ball. You need to do your thing and close this game for us. And I feel like, that's Stevens, because we've heard Stevens say before, well, we think anybody should be able to take those shots in those minutes. And that's not how professional basketball is played. Like, no other team really does that. For example, if you look at the Golden State Warriors, I mean, in those clutch moments, that ball is going to go to one of three players. And those are Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, or Kevin Durant. With most teams that have had Kyrie on them, that in that clutch moment, they're going to try to get the ball to Kyrie. And that, you have to have that on a professional team if you want to go for a championship, because you will get to those clutch moments. And you need to recognize who is hot and who can close the game at that point. And you have to do what you have to do to get them the ball. And they have to do their part. Then they have to meet you, halfway and actually hit the shot and close the game. But it's something I don't see. I agree with you. It's something we don't see in Boston. And I think that's a top-down problem because it starts with the coach, because the coach is the one who, should help establish that pecking order.
Igor, your mic's you're muted.
You're muted.
Didn't see. I wanted to say that we have been talking about hierarchy and is correct. And this is like what we were talking about, Smart taking more shots than Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I understand when, for example, when two of the top three players are out. For example, when Brown is out, when Kemba Walker is out, then Jason Tatum is taking the most of the shoots, and then Marcus Smart is taking second most of the shoots. That's what I can understand. I don't agree with that, but I can understand. But everybody's there, and Marcus Smart is hitting like 11 threes, and taking like 16 field goal attempts. I don't like it, He can be hot. I remember Cleveland Cavaliers series where we lost 4-1. He scored like he shot it like 9-11 for three, and he got us victory. And I mean, those games can happen. He can get hot, but you must have hierarchy at the team. Returning to guys trade player exception, I posted an article and about what Danny Ainge said. Danny Ainge said, quote, on Thatcher and Rich, I hope that we will discuss on the next show also, that and by the way, to say, somebody asked me, where is the trade deadline? Guys, the trade deadline is 25th March, 3 p.m. Eastern. 25th March, 3 p.m. Eastern. So we have a month and a half till the trade deadline. Asked on Thatcher and Rich on Boston's biggest need is with the trade player exception. Danny Ainge said shooting and size, says the team is looking for a complete player who can help defensive focus too. Called traded deadline the sweet spot for likely to use traded player exception. And Danny Ainge in his interview practically admitted what we have been saying on our shows. I mean, we lost Gordon Hayward, we lost Cantor, we lost Wanamaker, and we replaced them with Teague, with Thompson, and bunch of rookies and sophomores. The biggest fall down is the defense, and this year we are not top 10, neither defense, neither offense. I talk about loss of Hayward, we talk about Kemba Walker and his injury problems. So we lack of the wing depth right now. Behind Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, you have the rookies and the players like Shemi Ojule, Carson Edwards, like Romeo Langford, who is also injured. Then the rookie that I forgot the name, Naismith. Yes, we have Naismith and we have Waters. So those are not the players that you can depend on in the playoffs. So yes, I agree with him. We need the depth at the wing positions. I would say that we need power forward center too, but never mind. So we will see what he can do with the traded player exception. I had one more addition to that. Our friend Davor wrote excellent stuff from about traded player exception stuff because somebody was asking us at the page, can we use the whole traded player exception, and can we combine the traded player exception and the players? And I think that this is the answer. We have traded player exception 28.5 millions because we are hard capped, because we use sign and trade at the beginning of the season. We are hard capped. So because we are hard capped, we can use only 21.5 millions this season. You have the limit of the sum you can use. So whole amount, 21.5 millions in the off season. So we can use, for example, 13 billions for Redick. But the reasons for no, Redick is one of the names that is attached with us, using nearly half of traded player exception, which is 28.5 millions. So if you use 13 millions for 36 years old shooter, for a few months rental when somebody else could be available. Also, we should be targeting guys, the players that are under contract for the next season. That way, you're providing your team the help in the next season. You're not renting the players couple of months for 13 millions old. This is insane. If you rent the players couple of months for example, 13 or 14 years, millions, So Redick trade to go down. Options are Thompson, no. Smart, hell no. Or the few second round picks into our traded player exception. So hypothetically, Redick trade our trade player exception goes down from 28.5 millions to 15.5 millions. Reasons for yes, we need a playoff tested veteran. Redick is far away from ideal target, but we could he can solve our problems. The problem is we don't have any 12 to 15 million salary except Smart. Tatum, Brown, untouchable. Walker, I don't think that Danny Ainge will trade Walker. Rest of the guys, except Tristan Thompson, are on the rookie deals. For any future big trade, we need a player, Redick kind, mid-level contract. If we trade for Redick today, we could combine him with somebody for trade deadline deal. For example, I would love Harrison Barnes or Aaron Gordon as traded player exception targets. If we could have them, Gordon or Harrison Barnes, for draft picks, our remaining traded player exception would be 10.5 millions, and we could use it in summer, for example. But if we acquire Redick, we can trade him at the trade deadline, for example, with one of the players like Shemi Ojole, Carson Edwards, Javonte Green, or Grant for Harrison Barnes or Gordon, and still have traded player exception of 15.5 millions for the offseason. We need medium-sized salary for the future for the future trades. This is why I'm pro Redick trade. It could be down from 28.5 millions traded player exception for unknown player, or 15 millions point five traded player exception and Barnes or Gordon. And those are some of the combinations. I will ask Danny, what do you think about what is said about traded player exception?
Well, again, I believe in this situation that if we're going to do anything, we truly need to make sure that we get someone that is going to be here for the long run, in my opinion, because you're only going to get a chance with this once. Now that you've given the max contract to Jason Tatum, you've given a max contract to Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, regardless of how people might look at him outside of Boston when it comes to the fact that he may not be a decent three-point shooter, he may not be a dominant offensive player, he is pretty much the captain of this team, the offensive, I guess you could say the heart and soul of this team, the captain. You're going to have to give him a contract to return in this situation. If not, there might be a riot in this city, and across Celtics Nation, across the country. We got too many of those things happening already in this country, so you can't have another one. So you're going to have to give him another contract. You're in a position, Igor, where you cannot be taking that mid-level, that traded player exception and just giving it to anyone that is not going to be willing to return if their contract expires in just a few short months. In my opinion, you got to look and talk with these players to say, if you want to come and play for Boston, we're willing to make the move for you, only if you're willing to discuss the potential of staying with us long term. If you're someone that's looking to leave with us so that you can have the potential, let's say, of running to Miami or running to play with LeBron and the Lakers or something like that, then it's not worth us taking what could be a $28.5 million trade exception in just a few short months and giving it to you just so you can get out of whatever rotten situation you're in right now and then losing out in just a few short months. Remember, there's something I think that people got to consider, and this is something that's critical when people talk about Kemba Walker. You guys have seen it in the group. People are talking like crazy. Trade Kemba Walker. Trade Kemba Walker. There's two things none of those people seem to be considering. One, Kemba Walker is somebody who can't seem to stay healthy. What team out there is going to look to take... Igor, you're muted, buddy. You're going to have to say...
He is practically untradeable. Andy will explain after you. Excuse me. Please continue. Kemba Walker. Not because Danny Ainge don't want to trade him, because other teams will not take him. please continue.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much how I'm saying it. For one, he's unless the general manager is looking to like take some sort of a rebuild for his team to go towards the future, and he basically doesn't give a crap about the next few seasons. Kemba Walker is not going to be able to be traded to any team, for one, that is looking to really be a true contender. And two, what general manager is really going to be willing to trust Danny Ainge? Ladies and gentlemen, the man has a reputation across the league where we can say he was lucky. The man was lucky to get that traded player exception from the Charlotte Hornets for sending Gordon Hayward to them. Gordon Hayward could have easily ended up going to the Hornets without Danny Ainge getting a damn cent in exchange for them. So, Michael Jordan basically did you a favor in this case. And why is it that Danny Ainge has this reputation? Because everybody feels he basically took advantage of the Brooklyn Nets several years ago when we made that deal that sent Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to Brooklyn. There is no general manager that is in the right state of mind that is really looking to deal with Danny Ainge unless they are in a desperate state of mind. Really. So, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to be with Kemba Walker in for the long run. Kemba Walker, Igor, you just mentioned, along with Kevin and Andy, Andrew, the assist. Marcus Smart averages the most assists on this team right now, with Kemba Walker being second. Who are you going to bring to this team that you think is really going to be able to basically make the type of passes that Kemba Walker makes right now? You know, really, you people have to really have to consider the fact that unlike Brown and Tatum, when they have a rotten night, which we've seen a few of them already this season at times from those guys, both of them in this situation didn't go into the offseason injured and didn't come into this season not being able to play. Tatum's the only one that we can say had to miss some time during the season thus far, thanks to the COVID situation. Brown, on the other hand, until yesterday, really has been able to keep going thus far. So really, there's been no excuse for him to be kind of like off in any sort of way. But Kemba, you guys, fans have got to really get it through their head. You are not going to be able to trade this man and get a fair exchange from any other team for knowing the amount of money you are now paying him for what his injury history now is, and because of what Danny Ainge's reputation is across the league. I'm sorry. So you're now in a position where this traded player exception is the last real opportunity that Danny Ainge has to get any real talent on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Because after that, there ain't nothing else, Igor. There ain't nothing else on this team outside of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, and Marcus Smart that is of value. Fans ain't going to want to trade Tatum. Fans ain't going to want to trade Jaylen Brown. And we've already seen fans admit they do not want to trade Marcus Smart. And if you can't trade Kemba in any sort of way, then really, you think any team out there is going to want to take? And I think, Igor, you're unmuted. So you think any out you guys? And I think Kevin is unmuted, so he's unmuting our microphones. So do you think any team out there, you guys, actually going to want to take a bunch of our guys that we know really don't have any impact on what happens. Brett Williams, Romeo Langford, and Neesmith for their best players. Think about it, Kevin.
Let me ask you guys.
I've never given you someone in this situation. One of our end of the bench guys, the bench runners in this situation, like Carson Edwards. I'll give you Carson Edwards. You come back and you give me Reddit in this situation. That's how our fans are thinking, you guys, at this point. You can give guys who barely make any money, barely get any playing time in exchange for legit stars in this league. So, Igor, I say no. Unless you can guarantee those guys, unless you don't contracts are about to end, I say keep it. Keep it and get somebody that is on a long term. If your budget's gone, it's gone. And you ain't going to have any cap space for the next 2 years after that.
And Daniel makes a good point there because I'm looking at all the free agents right now that's going to be free agents at the end of the year, and nobody really pushes the needle for me that could come to the Celtics and make them a better team than what they are right now. You have Kyle Lowry, who's going to be a free agent next year, but if you get Kyle Lowry, then Kemba's got to go. You got DeMar DeRozan. He's probably one of the players that probably could come to Boston at the end of the season, but I think his heart is still in Toronto. Okay, those are two guys I feel that could come and can push the needle a little bit because they both can play offense and they both can play defense. But Daniel, you have a great point right there about the trade exception, and if they use it before the season's out, who they gonna use it on, how they gonna get them. That's the biggest issue right there. That's why I don't really think that he's gonna use a trade exception until after the season's over with, because there's really nobody out there that you're gonna bring in that's gonna want to stay. You use it on JJ Redick, who's older, and he got a contract. He still has another. He just signed a new contract with New Orleans, but he's going to get older, and this is one of his worst seasons right now, which is a surprise because he has a point guard in Lonzo Ball that can get him the ball too as well. I look at New Orleans and there is some issues down there going on in New Orleans. I think Alonzo Ball probably will be out of there if they can move him. I'm hearing New York might be a landing spot for him, more or less. But again, if we bring JJ there, he's older, okay? And what are you gonna give up? If we make the playoffs, that draft pick is going to be in the 20s. You know what I'm saying? So you can't even dangle the draft pick. You know, we're in a situation right now that we didn't take advantage of as an organization when they had Kyrie, when they had Al Horford, when they had Gordon Hayward. We didn't take advantage of that because we had guys like Rozier who outspokenly said, I should be starting, okay, over Kyrie, which we all know Kyrie won a gold medal. He won an NBA championship. There's no way that Rozier should have started over him. Okay, there's no way. I mean, Rozier might be balling now in Charlotte, but they're playing 500 ball right now. Then you got Jaylen Brown got mad because of Gordon Hayward. Okay, so it was there. We had it. We was molding it to where we wanted to be. But because certain players on that team said they felt like they could take over and they could be the better player for the organization, and we're seeing that one player's gone, okay, and we're not seeing the end result of what we thought we was going to see when we had those picks from Brooklyn. We didn't take advantage of it like we should have. I think Danny Ainge he had the team there with Al, Gordon. Even Kyrie, you know, you take Kyrie out the picture, you still got Al, you got Gordon there, but you get rid of those two guys who played in the great system that Brad Stevenson had, and they played defense. Now we're looking at the team right now, like Igor says, we're not in the top 10 in defense. We're not in the top 10 in offense. We're just going along for the ride right now. And like Andy said, yo, hit the reset button. Celtics fans got to realize something, right? If they hit the reset button, it's not going to be that bad of a reset for the simple fact that you're trying to find guys that want to come to Boston and play. You want to find guys that want to play for an NBA title. Okay, I'm gonna say this: even though LeBron's in LA, if he doesn't get a chance to play against the Boston Celtics in the finals, his championships to me don't mean anything because he hasn't played against the Celtics in the finals. Every great Laker has played against the Celtics in the finals. Okay, win, lose, or draw, I think that puts him over the top with a lot of people. You know, but right now, as we're composed as a team, the fans got to understand something. And I know I'm a diehard fan like they are. I want to see them in the play. I want to see them go win a championship. I definitely do. You know what I'm saying? But this team's not built for that. And me and Igor talked about this 3 years ago. Matter of fact, we talked about it when Gordon Hayward got hurt. And I said to Igor, I said, you know, this is going to be a pass year, right? I said, it's going to be a pass year because Gordon got hurt. So Danny Ainge going to look at it as a pass. Okay? Then you looked at the Kyrie Irving, looked at it as pass. So now we're looking at last season as a pass because Kemba was hurt and Gordon was hurt. So how many passes are we going to still get as a basketball organization? And even with the coaching, even with Brad Stevens as a coach, you know what I'm saying? How many passes do you get? Because sooner or later, Danny Ainge going to be on the hot seat again. Okay? And he's not going to have the opportunity to bring in a Kevin Garnett or Ray Allen because the younger guys on the team are not getting that much time playing, okay, to get to show their talent. You know what I'm saying? If you think back on when they got Kevin Garnett, Boston had just won 5 in a row and Paul Pierce got hurt. Yeah. Okay. They had some young talented players. They had Al Jefferson on the team. They had some young players. And so Minnesota saw a need for something, even though Kevin McHale might have he kind of might have slid some underneath the table to him. But you had guys that had potential. You know what I'm saying? We're looking at the team right now, and like you said, Daniel, Tremont, Edwards, Simi.
They're role players. They're role players.
Exactly, Andrew. Exactly. And so we're stuck with what we're stuck with, ladies and gentlemen, and you got to deal with this. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful. It's going to be really painful this year, because the Sixers are playing great basketball right now, but don't get upset if they upset us in the playoffs. That's all I got to say, because they got the ingredients this year to be that team that could upset us. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't get upset if it happens, because we just don't have the talent that we need to have with the Celtics to advance to maybe the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah. We need some luck. We need somebody. Yeah. We need somebody to get hurt, or God forbid somebody get hurt or not. But we need that type of luck. Andy, go ahead. You got something to say?
Yeah, I was thinking that, when we talk about somebody when I talk about trading for JJ Redick, I look at that as part of a trade. Like, the primary goal of that trade is to get Lonzo Ball. JJ Redick, that's almost like a concession to the Pelicans, saying, hey, look, we'll take his salary and we'll clean up your roster a little bit. If you make it a little bit easier on us to get Lonzo. Because the Pelicans, from what I've heard, they want to go with a youth movement. Redick hasn't been productive this year. He's eating up, I think he's like $11 or $13 million contract, but it does end. This is the last season of that contract, so we'd be out of it. And it's really just a move for us to say, hey, we'll take his contract in return for Ball. And the idea would be to move Kemba, and I think there is a halfway chance that Dallas might be interested in taking a trade for THJ for Kemba or something like that. THJ and some salary filler I think we'd have to have for Kemba, because I think it would put the Mavs over the hard cap to do a 1-for-1. But they might be interested because Luka Doncic really needs a shooter next to him that he can pass the ball to. And Josh Richardson is a good defender, but that he hasn't really worked out for him as a shooter. THJ is currently on their bench, so that's something that they might say, hey, we get a starting caliber shooter in return for a bench wing. Okay. And they can afford to absorb the salary, and, maybe they're not as concerned with the defense because let's face it, Luka's not a great defender anyway. It's probably the weakest part of his game. And then that gives them 3 good offensive players in Luka, Porzingis, and Walker. I think there's a lot of negotiating with that. You have to really sell that, but I don't think that that's out of the question either for them to do a trade like that. And that clears the salary cap that we could use, to finish up with the Pelicans and bring in Lonzo. But I think the thing that it goes down to, though, is, do you view this current Celtics team with Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown as the 3 focal points? Do you view that as a team that could realistically win an NBA championship? And I don't. I think it's a fun team to watch. I think they're all good players, but I just don't think it's a team that can win a championship. And if that's the case, then we need to look at restructuring the team so that it can, not this year, but maybe in 2 or 3 years. And Walker is the one that just, kind of when the music stops, he's the one that's left without a chair because A, the defensive issues and the one-dimensional nature, and B, just age. I mean, in 2 to 3 years, Tatum and Brown are entering their prime or in their prime. Walker is on the downswing. So I think that that's something, we have to consider here too. And it's not, I think people have the conception or have the belief that I think Kemba Walker is a bad player. I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't think that he's suited for the type of team that we want to be and where we want to go as a team. And I think that, at this point, that makes, when you're paying somebody $32 million and you want to contend for a title, I mean, they better be helping you contend for the title. You don't pay $32 million for chemistry. I mean, me and Kevin, we add some chemistry to the show, but I don't think you guys are paying us $32 million a year for that. If so, please tell me. I'll go check my mailbox for that check right now. But that's the thing. You pay like $5 to $10 million for a chemistry guy. You don't pay, the $32 million. $32 million you pay for a guy that moves the needle, who contributes, who decisively contributes in a needed area that will put you over the top to win that title. And I don't see Kemba Walker as that type of player. I see him as being a very good player, especially if you're a team like Charlotte, who's trying to fill the seats. You're trying to, well, not this year, you're not trying to fill seats, but, you're trying to sell, you're trying to up your viewer rating. He's that type of player. He's a good player. He's fun to watch. He's going to get people to, get on the TV and watch your games. But he's not going to be the guy that, puts you over the top and takes you to a banner. And I think that's why I view him as being a trade, an easy trade target. And I think that, we could trade Walker without taking a significant step back. If we trade Tatum or Brown, then the whole experiment, the whole team is basically going to have to completely 180. Whereas I think we could trade Walker and still pretty much maintain the course we're going with a different player.
Excellent stuff. Can I say something, or Danny, go ahead?
Well, here's another argument, you guys, why to maybe go against it. Look at the contracts on this team and when they all match up. Kemba Walker's contract would expire in 2 years in this case. Granted, in this situation, he's got a player option in 2022, 2023. So, it's his opportunity, his decision whether or not to basically execute that or not. But practically, outside of Tatum and Brown, everybody else would expire at the same time or before that at that point. So if you're talking about a situation of basically thinking about whether or not we should look at trading in this situation, where do you think we're likely to basically get the next best player to join forces with Tatum and Brown? Via trade? Or do you think we might be able to get it, let's say, in maybe 2 years on the free agency market in this situation? I would tell you in this case that, again, Danny Ainge, you got 1 year. I've already said it earlier. I prefer to hold on to that traded player exception until this coming off season. But if you're going to be able to keep all those contracts to expire at some point, including Kemba's in this case, and maybe you can basically get Kemba to, at some point he thinks he's better to go off somewhere else. You could do the same thing with him now that you just did in this situation with Charlotte and do another signing trade, and maybe, you get another traded player exception that you can use elsewhere. But like I said, how much do you really think you're going to get for somebody who already a lot of people across the league are saying the man can't stay healthy in this case? And on top of it, their teams are realizing you get him now, you're only going to have maybe 2 years with him in this situation unless you're sending him to an actual championship contender. Because he didn't leave Charlotte, where he was the man, to go to Boston thinking all of a sudden, oh, Boston's going to send me somewhere else and I'll stay there just to go to a team that I'm going to be out of the playoff picture or out of the championship picture. That's like a situation where you could say, like I'm arguing with a person in my Patriots group, oh, Drew Brees is going to go from being somebody who takes $35 million to go to a minimum contract just to stay playing in the NFL, compared to me telling you he's going to retire? Like, really? Kemba Walker's not going to do that, guys. I'm sorry. Either you're going to go the route in this situation of keeping him and hope that he basically walks away with all the other guys. You can get rid of all of them at that point and try to do something in free agency, or let him go somewhere else where he can basically, you tell him, we'll trade you to any other team in this case you want to go to in this situation. But it's obvious in this case it's not working between us at that point, And how do you think Tatum and Brown themselves, you guys? Tatum and Brown, if it's really a situation where they're the best players and really, you can say they're the ones kind of making a lot of the major decisions. If Tatum and Brown don't want Kemba gone in this situation, don't you think that's going to play a major role? You just said it yourself. I said it pretty much, and I've been saying it for the last 2 years every time we go at it with these people in the group. We have a civil war going on in our group because of what Kevin just mentioned when it came to the issue of Tatum, Brown, and Rozier versus Kyrie, Horford, and Hayward. Half the group wanted to stay with the issue of letting Irving, Horford, and Hayward lead this team to the future because they felt those three could have let this team be a contender right now. Others wanted to see those guys get kicked out the door and let Tatum, Brown, and Rozier take over the team because of one measly playoff run that those guys basically made. And sure enough, those fans got what they wanted, which is why fans like us four have basically said, okay, you wanted to put them ahead of guys who were already established, already knew what it took to basically win championships or get deep playoff runs. So now is when they got to prove it. We don't give them 5, 10, 15 years to basically get the, I guess you can say, the experience and to basically get themselves into a prime position to basically go and prove it. They're supposed to be ready and primed to do it now because we had guys who were already experienced and primed to do it now, and you wanted them put ahead. So we've been having how much issues, Igor, in the group between fans and even between the admins and members because of that one issue? So that's why I'm saying, you guys, in this situation, this issue when it comes to, the issue of looking towards the future and all of that, we have to now focus on a major problem, but it's going to be crazy, and fans have just got to start realizing the evidence is there. The evidence is there. It's been there for all these years. And how much more evidence do you need to finally come out and say, at some point, we all want the same thing. We all want to see Banner 17 get put up there in this case. But not every fan is going to want it, is going to basically be the same way. We're not all rigged the same way when it comes to how we look at things with these teams. Not all of us are in Boston, Massachusetts in this case. The four of us in this situation right now, I think the only one out of us four that's in the state of Massachusetts is me at this point. in this case, you know? And does that make me any different from you guys when it comes to what we want? No. And that makes me no different from the rest of you people that are watching us right now live on this video chat or from any of you that are in the group. And that's why I keep saying, we all want the same thing, but when it comes to basically how we rate the team and how we judge them when it comes to their failures and their successes, you just got to basically accept that we're not going to basically be the same at all times. I'm sorry. And that just makes us different. Same thing when it comes to how we look at politics. Same thing when it comes to how we look at things in life in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the fact that nobody wants to say their baby's ugly, But I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. For me, I think that the big thing is when Kyrie and Hayward and Horford left, I think everybody is pretty much knows. I thought we should have done everything we could to keep Kyrie and Hayward because they're established stars in the league. With that being said, I think that now, when Kyrie left, I thought that it was time for us to hit a reset button and go for a 2 to 3 year reset. Realistically, that, when you have that much of an exodus, not just Kyrie, but all the veterans were leaving. I mean, we traded Baines. We didn't talk to Morris. Horford left. So we literally lost like all the veterans on the team. When that happens, what you would ideally do is just hit the reset button and go with young players and try to build around a new young team. And that's why the Kemba signing just never seemed to make sense to me because, here we are. We lost all of our veterans. We should be going into a short rebuild. And instead, now we're signing, a 29-year-old point guard who's the lesser version of Kyrie Irving, which we just saw didn't work. So that's why it was kind of confusing to me. So I'm saying that I'm like, this is like the definition of insanity times 2. Let's try to do the same thing in a lesser way and expect a different result. I want the Celtics to do well, but I just don't, I don't see an optimistic, even like on the most optimistic view I can take. I don't see how this current roster can beat the best teams in the West. I just don't see it. Sure, we could surprise a team. We could beat a team on any given night. But that could be said for a lot of teams in the NBA. A lot of teams could beat a lot of other teams on any given night. That's why we play the game. It's 7-game series though. I know fans are upbeat because we came within 1 point of beating the Lakers, but we all know that it is 7-game playoff series in the finals. We all know what LeBron is going to do. We all know LeBron is going to hit that next level that has put him in the conversation for the greatest player of all time. And we don't have a guy that's going to hit that same level that we can rely on to hit that same level. So, you can beat the Lakers with LeBron in the regular season, but you have to know that any LeBron-led team is going to be a much, much different team in a 7-game final series because LeBron is going to put himself on that next level and he's going to drag, even, like with the Cavs, if he has to drag the whole team kicking and screaming, he's going to bring them all to another level too. And I think that's the
Andy, thing. I found the team that he brought into the finals 2009 when he was 25. Listen to this. The team was coach Mike Brown. He had point guard Daniel Booby Gibson, then shooting guard Danny Green, power forward J.J. Hickson, center Zydrunas Ilgauskas, then LeBron James, then Antoine Jamison, power forward, then Shaquille O'Neal was there, then Anthony Parker, Leon Powe, Sebastian Telfair, Anderson Varejao, Delonte West, and Mo Williams. that was the team 2009 and 10. I mean, LeBron is leading every single team to another level. I wanted to mention a couple of things about traded player exception. Boston has actually generated 3 traded player exception in return for Gordon Hayward, Enes Kanter, and Vincent Poirier. Gordon Hayward is 28.5 millions. Enes Kanter traded player exception is 5 millions, and Vincent Poirier is 2.5 millions. And now trade player exceptions cannot be combined. Those three exceptions cannot be combined. And the Celtics can only absorb a player dose salary equal or lower than individual exceptions. I think that because we are hard capped this season, we can use 21.5 millions of traded player exception for Gordon Hayward. And the next summer, we can use the whole 28.5 millions. For example, the Celtics cannot combine their three exceptions, 28.5 millions, 5 millions, and 2.5 millions to trade for Paul George, who is worth 35.5 million salary. Boston can, however, trade, for example, for Denver's Gary Harris and absorb 9.6 million salary because with Gordon Hayward trade player exception. We can use 21.5 millions trade player exception from Gordon Hayward this season, and Gary Harris is worth 19.6 million. So we can trade, for example, with Gary Harris. So again, other possibility maybe the possibility Aaron Gordon, as we mentioned, 18.1 millions. Maybe if the Celtics needed more point guard depth, we can try to call Oklahoma City about George Hill, 9.6 millions, and offer some picks. But remember, any trade partner to do dump salary would want a set picks or something in return. The Celtics would have to send young talent and a future draft pick, but it gives Boston more flexibility going forward. And Boston's treasure chest of future first round picks is currently bare, having utilized 3 first rounders this summer. We have 1 first rounder and one second rounder, if I'm correct, moving forward the next summer. It puts them even greater premium to make deals, to restock their draft picks, or to utilize some draft talents. Trade, Andy, that I mentioned for JJ Redick would be only one step forward. Future trade, for example, if we make a trade right now and give 13 millions, like I said, to JJ Redick, his expiring contract, Danny, if I'm correct. So we use 13 millions right now. We still would have 15.5 millions to use in the summer from Gordon Hayward traded player exception. And we still can make a deal. Right now, we would have then medium salary that we can trade JJ Redick, because you don't want to trade Marcus Smart, you don't want to trade Tatum Brown, you don't want to trade Theis, so you don't have medium contract in a big trade. So if you trade right now for JJ Redick, like I said, give a pick, give young players, one of our young players, and make a veteran, JJ Redick. Now, you can trade JJ Redick, for example, at the trade deadline for Harrison Barnes, or we can use him for the big man, or we can use to trade like Andy wants for Lonzo Ball. Personally, I think LaMelo Ball is having higher potential a little, but Lonzo is also very good player if we want to hit reset button, as Andy is saying. Right now, what the Celtics need right now, need is to look ourselves into the mirror. What we are trying to do, like Andy said, are we trying to contend? Great. It doesn't matter what the four of us think. Go all into the contention, but do not be cheap. Do not stay under the salary cap, and do not tell us I'm trying to contend, because we are not stupid here, okay? We are exploring. We know how salary cap is working. So if you're trying to contend, and if you operate like a small market team, you're lying to somebody. You're lying either to yourself or you're lying to us. So if you want to contend, go all in and bring in the help to this core. And if you want to hit reset button like Andy proposed, then trade Kemba Walker and get the young player. I mean, tonight I was watching and keeping an eye, guys, and really I was drawing about, and I remember that Andy is talking about Halliburton. And God, the Kings defeated us and defeated 6 out of 7. The three players, the Aaron Fox in that 7 games, 26 points, 8 rebounds. Harrison Barnes, our potential target, 22 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. And the shooting splits 54, 48, 92. 54, 48, 92. Halliburton of the bench, 13, 5, 6. Tonight, Halliburton, he sinks. He was clutched against Denver. And again, to mention, the first is to realize where we are, what we are trying to do. I mean, like Kevin mentioned, if we want if you want to hit the reset button, get some assets, because our treasure of draft picks and assets is not rich anymore. Some question: does Boston medical team need to be changed? Look at the players we miss because of our medical team. I will leave that hard question to Andy, for example. Andy, what do you think about our doctors in Boston?
Yeah, so I think with the medical team, I mean, I think there's a couple of different. I'm not sure I 100% understand the question here. It looks like we missed all the players we missed because of our medical team. I don't know if that's referring to like players that we haven't drafted or traded for, or if that's referring to players who have missed games. But I guess I can address both. I think in terms of players who missed games, I do have some questions. Like Langford seems like we were kind of discussing that earlier. It seems like a really weird situation. I mean, he had the surgery back in September. I looked it up. It was in September he had the surgery. We're in February now, so that's 5 months. And I mean, if he's still not playing, then to me that's a pretty big concern. Because I had surgery done on my rotator cuff, and that it puts you down, and I would say it's a relatively serious surgery to have in terms of like being able to use your arm, because you're basically immobile for like a month plus after that. But I was still able to return to relatively normal work within 3-4 months. And so he's not, he's not playing. We have no timeline really for his return. So I think that's a real concern, but I don't know how much of that is on the medical team, because if you look at it, a lot of the guys that we have that have been out injured, they kind of came to us injured. Like Langford, we knew that he had those issues. Like that was something we knew about. Time Lord missed a lot of time over the last 2 years, but that was another thing that I think we found out about. It wasn't really something we could have controlled. I think the big question, and then we do have players like Horford and Walker who have missed games, but I think that's also on the front office and who we're bringing in. When you have a big man that's 30 years old, I mean, the reality in the modern NBA is that you're going to rest him a lot of games. Same thing with Walker. I mean, a lot of those small, agile guards around Kemba's age, they do start to get that wear and tear where they start to have those knee and hip problems. We saw it with Thomas. You see that with a lot of these smaller guards, because they're relying, how they score is they rely on those quick changes of direction. And that's tough on your knees and your hips, because you're driving that knee or hip into the court to create that sudden stop so you can move back. And they do that more than like a bigger player. Bigger players might take, like a player like LeBron might take more contact, but he's also not doing a whole lot of very rapid changes of direction that are putting stress on his knees and hips. He's more barreling in, and when you build your body, your bulk like he is, it's not as much punishment on your body because you're not trying, you're not stressing your knees, ankles, and hips by suddenly stopping all your forward momentum to change direction. You're just taking your forward momentum and banging it into somebody else. And let's face it, contact in basketball isn't the way that it was 20, 30 years ago. So I think that some of this is to be expected based on the players that we draft. I think my question more so, I actually think that my biggest question is, are we being too careful with our players? And we're not pushing them to return to activity quickly enough? Because anybody who's ever been in a physical job before, I mean, Kevin, I can see you have your Marine Corps logo in the background there, so I know you've done some physical activity. So I was in the military for years, and if you sit for too long coming off an injury, you could get, I think they call it like compensation injuries, because you're so used to not using that side, that arm, that leg, that you start to compensate. And then you end up injuring the other side because you aren't compensating, because you're compensating, you're putting more wear on that. So sometimes I wonder if that's part of our problem. We're not pushing people to come back, and then they're being put back into game activity, which is much higher tier. So maybe also they're not being eased back into it properly. And we're saying, oh, rest until you feel better, rest until you feel better, rest until you feel better. And then, oh, by the way, now we need you to go and play high intensity basketball. And now all of a sudden, your body's trying to react to that. That's when people get injured, because that happened to me. I came back from a back injury. I was too careful, and I rested too long, and then I tried to go back up to my normal level of activity. I injured my back again within 2 weeks. So I think that that's something it has to be considered too. Are we being too careful? Are we not pushing these guys to be more physically active? And it's hard for us to say because we're fans. We're not there in the locker room. We're not in the Auerbach Center seeing how these guys are being eased back in from their injuries. But I think there are legitimate concerns, but I also think that sometimes the concerns that fans have are overblown, and some of it's just, the players that we're bringing in.
Well, actually, you guys, that would actually bring up an interesting thing I posted, and this has to do with the upcoming schedule in this situation. We're only about a month away from this potential All-Star break. I think everybody can realize the last 2 years, the All-Star break has been, I guess you could say, a house of horrors for our Boston Celtics. Things have not gone well. We've sent players to the All-Star break festivities, and something that has happened the last 2 years for us that have basically resulted in the NBA playoffs being a bad result. Last year, if I'm correct, it was Kemba that ended up facing an injury because he played too many minutes in the game itself. If I'm correct, you guys can, correct me if I'm wrong. And then the year before, it was Kyrie who was hurt. So I've already made it clear, and I even posted it in the group. I told people, don't be asking me for my opinion on who do I think we should be sending to the All-Star game, who should you vote for, because I don't get involved in voting, because the All-Star game festivities is nothing but a damn popularity contest. You already know who the five people are going to be pretty much going to the All-Star game every year. LeBron James, you guys, he could go the whole first half of the season and not score a single point, and he's going to end up going in as one of the top 5. Literally, that's the way I look at it in this situation. So one way or another, pretty much a majority of the guys that are going to be going in, which is why I don't even bother. It's just wasting your time. So I'm someone that has said I don't think we should be sending any Celtics to the All-Star game. Not only because of the fact that we seem to always have someone getting hurt going to play in that game that means absolutely nothing. I think you could say if the All-Star game would have been a little bit like what the MLB All-Star game used to be a few years ago, where home court in the finals would have been on the line like it used to be for the World Series, then maybe I would accept it. But obviously, that's not happening. It's never been like that with the All-Star game in the NBA. So the game is nothing, like I said, but a show for the fans. So if the game means nothing for the Celtics, there's no point to send any of our players to let them play in a game that could end up basically being injury. But now on top of it, and this is where we have some news, not for our Celtics, but for one of our rivals, Kevin Durant. We now know he was in contact with a COVID positive member of the Nets staff 3 separate times on Monday, which is exactly why now he's got to spend a week away from the team. So the next 7 days, he's going to be away from the team. They're going to be playing the 76ers. That's a pretty big matchup between Brooklyn and Philly. What makes us think there's a possibility none of our guys could end up coming into contact with somebody that's COVID positive during the All-Star festivities, all because our fans are choosing to vote and let them go and play in a game that means absolutely nothing? LeBron has already made it clear, and this is, trust me, I'm probably the person that basically probably, I guess you could say, I can't stand LeBron. I bet you can say I'm probably the one that runs the LeBron hate movement. I see Kevin, he's like, no, that's me in this situation, so, literally, if I had room in my wall here to put somebody up that I could basically just take a nice little gun and just shoot a couple bullets at them, it'd be a LeBron, poster. But literally, one thing I can say I agree with him in, Giannis has already said he agrees. Tatum kind of basically said the same thing. They don't feel there should be any All-Star game this year because they think there's just too much at risk in this situation. Not only due to the injuries as well in this case, but because of COVID. What do you three think in this situation? Not only the news with Kevin Durant that's come out within the last couple hours while we've been on the air, but also the fact that I think we got to get members in our group to start realizing you're just risking our guys. If you keep going to Twitter, because I noticed that Twitter the last few days, it's been like a retweet. With every retweet, you're doing 2 votes instead of 1 in this case. For every photo that you got of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kemba Walker, and so the tweets are being put out like crazy. We gotta literally stop our members and basically tell them, have you not learned anything the last few years when it comes to the All-Star game? Especially when it's not our coach doing the coaching. I can maybe accept it if it was Brad Stevens because he will not put our guys at risk. But you don't think the coach from another team, if he knows he's got an opportunity to make his guys play a little bit less in a game that doesn't mean nothing and let the superstars from the other team basically take advantage and maybe risk them being hurt, you don't think he's going to do it? So please, if you really think we have a chance to win this year, stop voting for the All-Star game. Let Tatum, let Brown, let Kemba, let all of them spend 2 weeks with their families in this case, and then come back nice and rested and healthy for the stretch run for the second half of the season to try and get, because again, the Eastern Conference is loaded this year. There ain't no guarantees we're going to be a top seed this year in the Eastern Conference. We could easily be the 5th, 6th, or even 7th seed compared to being the number 1, 2, 3, or 4. So don't bother doing anything that will risk any one of those guys going down, because just losing one of them could be the difference between going to the Eastern Conference and being a first-round exit this year.
As far as our game is concerned, I don't think they should have one. And I think they went about it the wrong way because they were talking about it about maybe a month ago that they possibly was going to have one. But I think that when they first did when they contract negotiations, everything, they were saying that there's not going to be an All-Star game. They're going to select players, but they're 2 weeks off, I think it was, or something like that. Now all of a sudden, now they want an All-Star game. I don't think it's a safe thing to do. Just like the Super Bowl, I don't think it's the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, that's going to be a super router taker. Bottom line, and the same thing could be said about basketball, because if they allow fans to go to the arena, and I've been to All-Star game in Dallas, I've been to All-Star game in New Orleans, I've been to All-Star game in LA. Yo, don't care. They don't care whatsoever. They just want to go out there and party and have fun. And the thing about it is, in the situation we're in right now, man, we're trying to get rid of the thing. But if we keep doing these kind of things, we're never gonna get rid of the COVID. You know what I'm saying? And again, like you said before, if they brush up against one of the players, and don't know it, and come find out a week later, well, such had COVID now, you can't play for another 10, 15 games or whatever. Now you're stuck again. You know what I'm saying? So we don't I don't want that for any player, to be honest with you. I think the NBA went about it the wrong way as far as the All-Star. I understand the money part of it, because the money that they got, it was going to be for HBC schools and for COVID relief. That's where the money was going to go. So I understand all of that. But again, we're talking about billionaires. So even if you don't have the All-Star game, you can still contribute that money to wherever you want to contribute to without even having a game. And I'm glad the Bears are speaking up about it, because this was not negotiated at the very beginning of the season. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's wealth over health, and it's just letting you see what's more important in this is wealth over health, and it should be health over wealth.
Okay. I mean, I agree with you guys. Have nothing else to say. I don't care about NBA game. This is exhibition game. I don't have the will to watch the NBA game lately. Of course, I turn the eye because of our guys. If our guys are playing last year, Kemba Walker and Jason Tatum played one against each other in the different teams. But if I'm correct, never mind. I mean, we already have the players of our top three players. Two are injured or under limitations. Kemba Walker returned from injury. He is not playing back-to-back games. Jaylen Brown, he has the knee problems right now. According to the report that we received, Daniel, he will not play tomorrow in Phoenix against the Suns. So, I mean, I would prefer, like Daniel said, our best players to stay 2 weeks away from the basketball to heal and to be ready for the, run at the best possible playoff seed. We still don't know if the playoffs is going to be played in the bubble or not. If the playoffs is played in the bubble, then the seeding just doesn't matter too much. But if the playoffs is played in the home court arenas, then the seeding will mean something. Boston currently number 5. We will see when this will finish. I think that LeBron James said practically that this is irresponsible, and he called out openly NBA. I think for the first time that I'm following James, he called out, NBA, and he said that the game should not be on the program. The NBA should just select the players, like Kevin said, is agreed. And right now, the players will play. I think that we will have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I really hope that nobody will get hurt, and I really hope that nobody will get infected about the COVID situation that Kevin is talking about. Dear viewers and listeners, our opinion. We all here are putting health over money and over business, and we would like the games to be played safe. And Kemba Walker today stated that about vaccines, he needs more information about the vaccines before he will accept one vaccine, and that's the way it should be. Andrew, what is your opinion about the All-Star game that is going to be played?
Yeah, I think I agree with everybody else. The season's been so weird anyway. I think that, voting for the All-Star game is, that should happen, and we should vote for All-Stars like normal. But I don't see a reason for them to actually play the game. I mean, I consider myself to be a pretty big basketball fan in general. Beyond the Celtics, I enjoy watching the sport. watching it all over the world. I can't tell you the last time I've tuned in for an All-Star game. It just doesn't really interest me that much. Like I pay attention to who gets voted to the All-Star team, but I mean, like I think it's the worst All-Star game this side of the NFL's Pro Bowl. Like the Pro Bowl is probably the worst example of that. But and I agree. I think it's a bad decision in this age where we are concerned about health. And I think that's I think it's sort of irresponsible to be putting all these guys together in a situation that doesn't really need to happen for the season to continue. And I've also been an advocate that I think the playoffs should be played in a bubble to try to minimize the effect that COVID might have, because I think the last thing that any of us want to see at the end of a long season, we don't want to see an NBA title decided because two of one team's stars get sidelined by COVID for critical games in the finals. I think that putting the playoffs in a bubble is the only way that we can try to mitigate that, or the chances of that happening. So I think that's definitely something to consider. In terms of the vaccines, I've done quite a bit of reading on them, and it looks like it's I think they're pretty safe. Or as safe as getting any vaccine is. I mean, there's always the chance that you're going to have like an allergic or an adverse reaction. But I think there's a relatively minimal chance. But I also think I have a higher tolerance for those sorts of things, because I was in the military, and anybody who's ever deployed with the military before knows they give you like every vaccine known to man. Like I think I've literally got vaccinated for just about everything, including diseases that don't necessarily exist. But yeah, Kev knows. So I think maybe I'm a little bit more used to that than the average person, because we just went through, we got the vaccine. It's not like you think about it. You don't have a choice. You walk through the line, they have a huge revolving needle with like 6 needles in it, and they stick it in your arm, and that's it. Like you don't get a say in it. So but I do think that when it comes to things like that, I think Kemba, just like any player, they have the right to to ask for more information, or to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. But I do think that the NBA, if that becomes an issue, I think they need to make some sort of a ruling on it, because I also don't think that it's a great idea to have, half of the players get vaccinated, the other half not be vaccinated. I could see that causing a lot of problems down the road. I mean, what if, the Celtics all follow Kemba and decide not to get vaccinated, and then another team does, and then all of a sudden our team, the Celtics end up with, 4 players out for COVID. So I think that's something that has to be considered as well. But I think in general, I think the All-Star game should be postponed, or not postponed, but canceled. I guess I just don't see a good reason for it to happen.
Okay. I mean, what else need to be said? Andy, you missed the last show in which we tried to, explain the defense. I must say that you wrote excellent pieces about the defense and deficiencies about the Celtics defense. What is the problem, the schemes, the personnel about the Celtics defense, and we will talk on the show also. We must say that the Celtics played better defense, for example, in stretches against, the Lakers. Solid defense, solid defensive effort, better than average against Golden State, you can say. But pretty much Golden State right now in this team is Stephen Curry and the rest of the stuff. I love their James Wiseman, their big man. I think he has really good perspective. Of course, Klay Thompson is out. Draymond played. They lack of size due to the injuries of their big man. Andrew Wiggins is playing solid, but he's not a superstar like they predicted he will be. But he's playing solid. He's even playing defense right now. And at one moment, he stayed the only big at the floor. So we a little improved the defense, but Andy, what you have been talking about in your articles still is staying. Kemba returned, Kevin Pritchard returned, Marcus Smart is out, and it will be even more evident. When Kemba is on the floor, again, we don't hate Kemba or undersized guard, say Waters, whoever is on the floor. Opponent's team is going to target that player, Kemba, Waters, Pritchard, on the defense. They're trying to create the mismatch and the switch in which they can either attack them on the drive or post up, And Kemba is having problems, especially in the playoffs, with that, and especially if the guard or the player that he's facing is taller and stronger than him. For example, Ben Simmons or some stronger guard, or Patrick Beverly that he didn't play against the Clippers. I think that Patrick Beverly is not good matchup for Kemba, for example. On the defense, like you mentioned, we are helping. We are even over helping from the wing positions when the mismatch is occurring. For example, somebody is crossing Kemba, and then the rotations are happening, and usually the open space in the middle of the Celtics paint, Celtics paint, there is open space, and the opponents are using that. That is what is going on. We have problems at the big man. You mentioned, I think, in your articles that Robert Williams, he cannot switch at the perimeter. Daniel Theis is doing solid job. He's struggling in defending the paint against the taller guys. Robert Williams, he is the drop defender. He cannot switch at the perimeter, and our schemes are switch all. So sometimes, because of our schemes, Robert Williams is having problems. And the problems will not be fixed because of the schemes and because of personnel. We're not top 10 defense, and we will not be top 10 defense in the future this year, I'm afraid. Andy, you have something to add on the matter?
Yeah, I think defensively speaking, I think honestly what we're seeing in this year and what we saw against Miami last year in the playoffs is really how good Al Horford was defensively for this team. Because, I mean, we took that for granted and I think a lot of fans make the mistake of equating blocks and steals with good defense. But what that doesn't recognize is the fact that there are elite defenders in the NBA. I always use Klay Thompson as an example, but Horford's another one. Those two players are elite defenders, but they don't get the blocks and steals. And the reason they don't is because they're not overcommitting to those plays. They're positioning themselves where they put their hand up to alter a shot. They're not getting a block. They're forcing the shot to alter, which is really the same thing as a block, but it's not measured. And I think that that's something that we make the mistake of doing. And then, in terms of undersized guards, there's just not a lot of undersized guards. You have to be really tough to be a good defender when you're undersized in basketball. You have to be tough to play almost any sport when you're undersized. Because I grew up, I'm small. I'm like 5'4", and I grew up playing football, wrestling, and fighting MMA. And I'm always smaller. You have to have a certain mentality when you do that. Like when you're going to be undersized going into every matchup. And I think that, you see that with like Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry is a tough player. Fred VanVleet is a tough player, and they're able to defend well because of that physical and mental toughness. Because it's not just being physically tough. You have to have a mentality that you're willing to take a beating by running into a screen to go around it. And you have to not care. You have to mentally be tough enough to not care, to take those hits when you run into a solid screen and to just keep going on playing the game. And Pat Beverly, another one. And I think, Pat Beverly, I don't think Celtics fans realize what a good defender he is. So Pat Beverly is probably one of the only small guards I see who could get lost on a screen and still get a block coming back because he has amazing timing. I don't think I've seen another player in the NBA that has the timing to come in behind somebody and block the shot at the high point of their release. I mean, that's incredible. And I also don't see a lot of point guards that would stand in there in the way of a charging power forward and swipe the ball away from the rest and bringing it up to try for a layup. And that's what Pat Beverly does. And that's elite defense. And a lot of it's skill. Like I said, the timing to do that is insanely good. But the other part of it is just physical toughness and say, hey, I know I'm going to take this hit. I'm going to take the hit. And getting the ball is more important than than avoiding the physical pain of getting hit. And I just, I think that's something that's hard to teach. I think, and this is one of the reasons I like Peyton Pritchard, because I do see that in him. I've seen that in flashes in him where he's willing to go up there. Like when he tried to get that block on Jared Allen, that tells me that you have the mental toughness to go out there and defend. Kemba, I just haven't seen that. And, I don't think it's necessarily a knock on Kemba, but I don't think he's ever been asked to do that. And I don't see that type of player. Like, he's a very nice guy, but I just don't see that kind of dog in him the way, like Lowry. Lowry's like a pit bull. Pat Beverly's like we all remember seeing, Pat Beverly going at it with KD, or going at it with Westbrook. Like, Pat Beverly isn't scared of anybody. Smart's another one. Marcus Smart's another. He ain't scared of anybody. Like, he wants to fight Joel Embiid, I think. So, but I mean, like, Walker, I just don't see that in. He's more of a finesse type player. He tries to avoid. I feel like Walker tries to avoid contact more than getting into contact. And I think that's a mentality difference. And if you want to be a good defender, you can't be that way. Like, you have to, on some level, be looking for the contact.
Okay, Kevin, do you have something to add?
Real quick. Look like the Knicks and Detroit are talking. Derrick Rose with the Detroit, right?
Yes.
Look like Look like it said Knicks trying to acquire Derrick Rose. New York has engaged in talks to acquire guard Rose, and Pistons agreed that the trade is best for both sides. Wow. Ain't that something?
Okay, Danny, something to add or something to finish the show? Marathon. Celtics radio video chat, the longest video chat, 3 hours. So 3 hours.
Well, obviously, we are one person who thinks that we should try to acquire Derrick Rose. I don't know about that. I don't know what you guys think about that. In this case, Derrick Rose makes about $7 million in this case. So obviously, if you were to go for him, you wouldn't have to give up. You wouldn't need to be using the trade exception. You could maybe go after him for maybe one of the guys you got at the end of the bench. In this case, especially if Detroit's basically looking to just get rid of him, since it looks like there's just some dumb say by saying it's best for both parties. That's pretty much you saying there's something going on there. We got to get rid of you, So who knows? Maybe we can get rid of get him for the guy whose confidence basically has gone down the toilet and has now ended up in the sewer pretty much in Jeff Teague. Him and the combination of maybe one of the other guys who isn't playing right now. So it's the Celtics, you guys. Tomorrow should be interesting, especially now that we know Jaylen Brown's not going to play against the Phoenix Suns. But we should be winning that game tomorrow against Phoenix, regardless. You still got Tatum, you still got Jaylen Brown. I am truly hoping we do not see that 3 big man lineup tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon, should I say, to start that game. Tomorrow, if we see Thompson, Theis, and Grant starting that game, that is another reason why I will say Brad Stevens is proving he does not know what the heck he is doing. that you do not know how to learn from your past mistakes.
I think, Danny, that Jaylen Brown will not play tomorrow, right? So you meant we have Tatum, we have Walker, we have who else? You said Smart is not going to play, and Jaylen Brown is not going to play tomorrow, and Romeo Langford. Yes. So tomorrow against the Phoenix.
Igor, your microphone is out.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so tomorrow against the Phoenix, guys, Jaylen Brown is out, Romeo Langford is out, Marcus Smart is out. Everybody else is in. Peyton Pritchard will play, and like Danny said, I really hope that Brad Stevens will not experiment with the lineups, because I will have to take my medicine at the beginning of the, beginning of the games towards the three center lineup. But if you recall, guys, he played Al Horford at the point guard, so nothing can surprise you from Brad Stevens. But we should win the game against the Phoenix Suns. What do you think, Kevin? You're muted, Kevin.
Yeah.
You're muted, Kevin.
What I would like to see more, I like to see our defense come to play. Because you got Booker out there that can score on a dime. And then you got Aiton in the center position. So and you got your other role players as well. You got Chris Paul out there. So I want to see them play defense. I want the defense to be the reason why they win the game, not the offense. At some point in time, their defense got to get better. It has to get better. It's got to get better. Just got to get better. So hopefully we should have a win tomorrow. And I think we go to Utah after that, if I'm not mistaken, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah. So I would love a blowout. Then everybody could sit and rest, and then we could get ready for Utah, because they're playing great basketball right now too. So I'm looking for a win tomorrow, though. Hopefully.
Andy, your opinion about the Phoenix Suns game?
Yeah, I'm hoping for a win, but I'm actually not overly optimistic. I think Phoenix could very well win. I think Boston should win, but I think that the Suns match up with us pretty well. We don't really have a good answer to Ayton. And without Marcus Smart, we're going to have a hard time covering up both Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And I think Mikal Bridges is actually a pretty good matchup defensively against Tatum. So I think it's a good matchup. I think it's closer than people think. And I think Boston, I agree with Kev. I think this is a game that we need to win on our defense. Like, I want to see it that our defense can step up and shut down a team that has 2 or 3 scoring options. Because they have CP3, they have D-Book, they have Ayton. I think I'm with Kev on this. I want to see us prove that we could shut down one of those teams with 2 good scorers and a decent third option. And I think that would go a long ways to making me feel better about the season.
I'm trying to find out the informations about the game. Right now at my site that I am following, teamrankings.com, Boston is number 7. We have like 2.6% chances to be champions. Projected wins 42.7. Tomorrow games, let me see, Boston. I'm interested in betting odds. So predictions and starts, Boston +3. Boston +3. That means that who is the favorite? Suns are the favorites or not? Maybe the Boston.
No, Boston's +3. That means Boston would be favorited.
Yes.
I think the other thing to remember is Devin Booker's coming off injury, so he's a little bit rusty. But traditionally, Booker has always given the Celtics problems. It's one of those weird things you can't explain, but some players just play really well against some teams, and Booker seems to have historically always played really well against Boston. So it's another thing to keep in mind.
Well, and if you look at ESPN, they give Phoenix the 55.7% chance of winning tomorrow.
It's really interesting, but like Andy said, it's obvious that I mean, uh, on different sides, different odds, but here Boston +3. Anyway, to compare some statistics and to finish the show, points per game, Boston better, 112 and Phoenix 110. Average scoring margin, closer +2.2 and Phoenix +2.3. Average scoring margin. Fast break points, Boston better, 12.8. Points in the paint, Boston better. Assist per game, Phoenix Suns better, 26. Boston 22.6. Total rebounds, Boston better. Effective field goal percent, Boston better. Offensive rebounds, Boston better. Defensive stats, Phoenix better defense, 107.5. Boston 109.7. Opponents effective field goal percent allowed, Phoenix Suns 51.9% allowed. Opponents points in the paint, Boston better, and blocks per games and steals, Boston better. I am looking at the odds. Like I said, Boston +3 and Phoenix Suns -3 chances. It will be interesting. Like Andy said, closer than we think maybe. And Danny said like 50% they are giving. So the next show will be, guys, the next Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It really was a pleasure, and we will repeat it. Injuries: Suns, Cameron Pine out, Dario Saric out, and Abdel Nader, ex-player, out, and Jay Crowder day-to-day foot. So Phoenix Suns are without Cameron Pine, Dario Saric, Abdel Nader, Jay Crowder. We should win this game definitely. Guys, we will talk Saturday. Two more guys should join us, and we will definitely have one video chat at the beginning of the next month. That's March, and in the playoffs even more often, shorter chats. But we love to chat with you, and we're wishing you good night. Tomorrow I'm doing play-by-play, 2 p.m. Eastern. Phoenix Suns, Boston Celtics in Arizona. So against Cowboys and all the enemies there in Arizona. That's all from me. Daniel?
Yep. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk to you again in March. Of course, we'll know most likely what the schedule is looking like within the next few weeks, as obviously March 4th, you guys, is the last game before the All-Star break against Toronto, and it's expected that we will be told the second half schedule prior to the All-Star break. So we should know basically whether or not we'll be playing on March 6th. Most likely that's the target date for the next video chat in this case. But hopefully we win tomorrow. Everybody enjoy that Super Bowl matchup tomorrow between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, as a New England Patriot fan, I'll be rooting for Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. But other than that, you all stay safe and enjoy the show.